Hey everyone, what is up, and welcome back to my Higurashi When They Cry Let's Play. Today we'll be recording episode 27. So, last episode was a big one. We had a lot of big events. And I think we can kind of summarize this pretty quick, actually. A lot of people reached their breaking points. Um, Satoko reached hers. She couldn't handle everything happening anymore. Um, and she just had a breakdown in the classroom. Um, I think it was a result of Keichi just reaching out his hand to pet her like he normally does, right? Or normally did, right? And I guess I would guess that brought back memories of Satoshi, and that's finally what did it for her. And she broke down, right? And it was bad. It was frankly it was ugly, right? It was hard to watch. And Keiichi witnessed this, and he finally reached his breaking point too. He realized, look, this problem has to be solved. Um, we can't just let this go on any longer. And at this point, you know, he's gotten desperate. And so he realized he could end this by just killing Tepe. Um, so tonight, I believe, is the night of Watanagashi. It might not be this chapter because I don't think they ended the chapter. I think they ended it with the school day, not necessarily with the end of the actual day. So we'll see if they include the Watanagashi in this one. But if they do, the Watanagashi episode is bound to be a big one, whenever that is. But let's just go ahead and jump right into this because things are bound to get insane here soon. I mean, we're getting pretty deep in the game at this point. Chapter 9, like, you know, I don't know how many chapters is normal, but I don't think it can be that many more than this. Probably got a few to go. But let's just go ahead and load right into this. Man, Higurashi is a wild game because it's so chill for a while and then just boom, craziest game you've ever played. Mion and the others, having to set up for the Watanagashi festival or something, invited me along, but I refused. Of course I did. How could they be taking it easy and setting up for a festival in this situation? Mion had a lot of nerve. The first thing I did when I got back was take a shower. Not because I wanted to wash off sweat. It was because I wanted to be even calmer. I already understood this, but killing that man would be so very easy. The really hard thing would be not getting arrested for it, so we could get our peaceful days back. As I thought about it, I realized it wasn't easy. Japan's police force had the highest arrest rate in the world. We'll need to deceitfully pull off the perfect crime, and it couldn't be a half-hearted attempt. Still, it wasn't 100%. Even the best police force in the world couldn't have a 100% arrest rate. I've read a lot of articles on trials with people brought up on false charges. At court, they consider whether the charges are false or not, but figuring out the real criminal is entirely out of scope. And that meant perfect crimes did exist. In fact, perfect crimes are sort of like works of art. Oh my goodness, Keiichi, bro. Oh my goodness. I mean, he's fully gone cuckoo, right? They could even be respected and revered. You just had to look at the inundation of mystery novels everywhere throughout history. I would never read one of those. They dealt with all sorts of difficult-to-solve incidents involving secret rooms and alibis and stuff, but they all wanted to show one thing. They wanted to show the beauty of a perfect crime. There was something divine in the flawlessness of the word perfect. Yes, perfect crimes were skills of the gods, and in that sense, the serial freak deaths they were calling the curse of Yashiro-sama, I understood. They must have been the works of gods. Each one appeared to have been resolved, but they couldn't stop it from happening every year. Yeah, skills belonging only to gods, those are perfect crimes. And I would be setting up my own crime before a Yashiro-sama series of perfect crimes 4 years in the running. If I were to put it boldly, I was challenging a god. Dude is deifying whoever is behind the serial death incidents. This is insane. Foolhardiness would be needed to make the decision, but I needed to be calm, cool, colder than ice to put that plan together. Kill him like a flame, but as systematic as ice. Starting now, I need to retain both of those ideas within me. Modeling my crime after a mystery novel wasn't actually a bad thing to focus on. Sometimes kidnappings involved disturbing, original methods that made it into the newspaper were used as a basis for novels after the person was arrested. Stuff like that made it into the news. Day and night, for a very long time, mystery novel authors polish and refine their most fantastic artistic crimes. Imitating that could be a shortcut to planning the perfect crime in a short period of time. Of course, I haven't read enough mystery novels to act all high and mighty about them. The one who really liked mystery novels was my mom. She'd read every well-known mystery novel from overseas, from past and present. Every time she watched mystery shows, she would always criticize them as having cheap tricks or being poorly thought out. I wonder what the perfect crime would mean to her. Dude, something's telling me she doesn't want you to commit one.
これまでの推理小説の中で、母さんが一番よくできたと思った完全犯罪
Least suspicious thing that you could have asked. Good job, Keichi.
母さんって結構たくさん推理小説を読んでるでしょ。そういうの詳しいかなって思って。
それを読むから楽しいのよ。初めからトリックを教えちゃったら楽しみがなくなっちゃうわ。
It wasn't like I was asking for my own amusement. She was deflecting her question, so I would somehow butter her up first and draw out an answer.
そうね。よくできた推理小説。結構どれもこれもいろんな魅力があって、どれが面白かったとは言いにくいけど、強いてあげれば。
母さんの好きな小説のタイトルが知りたいんじゃないよ。母さんが一番舌を巻いた完全トリックが知りたいんだよ。
本当に完全なトリックだったら名探偵に解く余地がないじゃない。
That is true. It's true. And there'd be no point.
推理小説は解ける謎をいかに解くかの過程を楽しむものよ。
I agree with that.
解けない謎だったらそれは推理小説の題材になり得ないわね。
100% agree.
そっか。そりゃそうだよな。主人公に解けなかったらお話として成立しないもんな。
Was I being too simplistic? A mystery novel was basically a game. They were written so that you can get to the goal, so that you could solve them. But I couldn't use something so optimistic. It needed to be the be-all, end-all of tricks so that we could, without a doubt, return to our old lives.
ということはケイチ、真の完全犯罪は物語にすらならないというのがわかるかしら？
Mom looked at me intellectually and grinned impishly. I'd never gotten to read it, but apparently one time a long time ago, Mom had written her own mystery novel and submitted it for some mystery novel award. Apparently she was really into it.
物語にならないってどういう意味？
ケイチ、物語の最低構成要素は？
起承転結。
正解。特に肝心なのは当たり前だけど、木に当たる部分よ。スタートの木がなかったら、そもそも物語は始まらない。
Why does this feel like they're somehow talking about this game as a whole?
そりゃそうだよ。何も起こらなかったら何も始まらない。
そう。何も起こらないから事件にもならない。探偵も呼ばれないから推理もない。推理がないなら解決もない。つまり、これが究極の完全犯罪。
What? What is she implying? Like, I don't know how Keiichi's gonna read this, because it seems to me like right now she's just like saying the perfect crime would involve an incident not even happening. But like, how does that make sense? I don't know.
ちょっと待って。もう一度説明してくれるかな？
My mom just told me something absurd. She was saying it so smoothly too, so I kind of tuned her out, but she said something extremely important just now.
そんな難しい話じゃないわよ。
My bad, Keiichi's mom. Golly.
そもそも事件が発覚しなければいいだけの話。
Oh. Yeah, that makes sense. Just no one can know.
そもそも発覚しない事件。
つまり、例えばよ、誰も立ち入らない深い森の奥で、おじいさんが一人暮らしをしているとする。そのおじいさんがある日、斧で殺されました。ちなみに犯人は、じゃあ、おじいさんの息子ね。 おじいさんの家に来て一緒にお酒を飲んでいたんだけど、ちょっと喧嘩になって殺してしまった。
What an extremely cheap plot. It was an impulsive crime without a bit of planning. It was pretty far from a perfect crime.
でもケイチ、そこはとてもとても深い森の中の一軒家なの。
So who's gonna find it?
普段は絶対に誰も訪れない深い山奥の深い深い森の中。さて、殺した息子は町に帰ってきてこう言うの。おじいさんは元気だったって。
それのどこが完全犯罪なの？
Who would ever know?
ケイチ、この事件はね、おじいさんが殺されているのが見つかって初めて木を迎えるのよ。もしもこの後誰もおじいさんの家を訪れなかったら、永久に木は訪れない。
The beginning would never occur.
だからつまり物語は始まらない。事件が発覚しないから探偵も呼ばれない。そもそも誰も不審に思わないから謎も起こらない。おじいさんは今日も一人でのんびり森の奥で暮らしているんだろうね。で、お空におじいさんの顔が浮かんで、ジエンド。どう？こんな感じで。
すごいじゃないか。それちゃんとしたトリックだよ。
でも娯楽小説にはならないわね。
Yeah, Keiichi don't care about a novel.
推理小説は所詮娯楽書。完全犯罪の指南書にはなり得ないんだから。
I was trying hard to talk cheerfully to fool her, but inside I was excited. Special tools, strange geography, mysterious drugs, traps involving huge sums of cash. None of them were needed for perfect crimes. Actually, kind of several of these, check out for this game, right? Kind of literally all of them. Actually, maybe not traps involving huge sums of cash, but there are huge sums of cash in the Sonozaki family, at least, right? There were crimes committed involving them. This kind of, why does this feel like they're just yep, that's Higurashi. None of those are needed for a perfect crime. The important thing was that there wasn't a beginning. As long as the incident didn't come to light, it would be fine. Speaking broadly, I could kill him without anyone finding out, and dispose of the corpse somewhere no one could find. It would basically already be a perfect crime. Of course, if someone up and vanished one day all of a sudden, people would get suspicious. But that didn't apply to this man. Last year after their aunt died, he ran away from the village in fear of Oyashiro-sama. When the night of Watanagashi came around again, everyone would have to think that he ran away in fear again. I mean, he had been living with a lover of his in town. No matter what it felt like when he vanished, no one would be suspicious. People hated him, after all. I think you're on a little bit of copium. I think people would be suspicious. At least a little bit, right? The big thing is, first of all, Mion. I think Mion wouldn't say anything. That is my suspicion. But she does, if Teppei just vanished after Keiichi straight up was like, hey, can you kill Teppei? No? Okay. And then starts acting really weird. Yeah, dude, it's pretty obvious, right? Right now, you would probably just be, the prime suspect. People hated him, after all. No one would care where he went if he disappeared. When I thought about it like that, it got easier and easier to imagine killing him. There was no point in thinking inside my house anymore. Dang, I can't see tips here. That's fine. I wanted to read the ones about Teppei specifically. And what the Yakuza feel towards him. Because I couldn't remember if, they are, protecting Teppei or out to get Teppei. Right? Because if the Sonozakis, don't want Teppei dying, and he does, for example, yeah, Mion would probably say something, and then you're just cooked. But I actually don't remember exactly what they said. So I could probably go check real quick, actually. We'll quick save and go to main menu. Was it in here? Don't think so. Maybe it is. Nothing in there. Okay. No. Okay, so that is the tip I was thinking of, but they were saying he is not one of the people suspected of stealing that money. And so he is not one of the people that they sent letters out saying, don't harbor this guy, right? Or like, we're going to have a problem, right? Because they sent the people who stole the money, they did send out letters, like to other Yakuza groups saying not to harbor them. But Teppei was not one of them, so hard to say that he immediately gets some big, like, Yakuza retaliation, but it's not impossible. It's still not impossible. I left, getting my bike out of the garage. For now, it didn't matter where I was going. I just rode through the wind, trying to calm my excitement by feeling the cool air on my body. Where I'd kill him, how I'd do it, what time, and how to dispose of the corpse. If I just had those 4 things, I could get a good plan going. I was so surprised at how little there was to decide that I shivered. I'd been completely prepared to build this humongous plan over a really long period of time. But if I could just get these little things to happen, get these little things in order, I could put it into motion. Today was Saturday. I would have to kill him on the night of Watanagashi, so as long as I was standing in for Oyashiro-sama, I only had 24 hours remaining. Satoko, just hang on. For 24 more hours. I can't even imagine having to suffer through even more, but please hold out for a little longer. I know you can't even last another second, I know that, but please, just hold out. Your Nini will save you for sure. Outside, it was still early enough for the cicadas to be crying. Early afternoon. Evening was still a long way off. I looked at the sky. At some point it had gotten cloudy. Come to think of it, as I left the house, I heard on the TV that the weather forecast was calling for a chance of rain on Sunday. This is a new song. The sky was the color of lead. If I heard a little bit of thunder, I'd definitely have expected a sudden evening shower. My first destination was school. Before explaining why I was going there, I needed to explain what method for killing that man I had decided upon. I decided that the most suitable death, the one I needed to give him, was the same as last year's curse. The same as the punishment their aunt had received, being beaten to death. Wouldn't beating him to death be somewhat unreliable? You may think that stabbing him with a blade would be more reliable, but this was something I had chosen after a lot of thought. You just needed to think realistically. The law, it prohibited carrying any blades longer than 10 centimeters, I think. So the blades available to me, even the longest ones, were still limited to things shorter than a ruler. You can probably understand how tricky it would be with such a short reach to go up against an opponent that might fight back. In that case, a weapon with more reach, like a staff, would be far more advantageous. It might not be quite as inherently lethal, but since you could just keep hitting the guy until you killed him, the end result was the same. So what's a staff-like deadly weapon, terrifyingly powerful, and also eminently portable? By this point, you should immediately think of a metal baseball bat. I don't need to explain how terrifying a metal baseball bat can be as a weapon. Of special note is the fact that you can carry one around in broad daylight and not be thought of as suspicious. Just those 2 points would have been enough to choose a metal bat for my weapon. But there was one more reason for choosing a metal bat in particular, like the symbolic reason. I will speak about it later. Wow, okay. Keichi is like speaking to the reader now. That's weird. It's weird. After school that Saturday, my classmates were still having fun playing in the schoolyard. I could show up there and it would seem the same, and it would be the same as always, so nobody will think I'm suspicious. Getting my hands on the weapon without looking suspicious was actually a factor I couldn't ignore. I didn't normally play baseball, so if I went to a sports store looking for a metal bat, it would definitely be suspicious. I can't let there be a beginning to the story, so I needed to be really careful even about that. I'd left school. At a location at which my appearance wouldn't be suspicious, I would acquire the weapon. I checked inside the classroom through the window, but of course there was nobody there. The only students who would stay in there were me and the others when doing club activities. Without us, the classroom after school was just an empty, unused room. Without glancing around nervously, as if I'd just gone to get something I'd forgotten, I casually went in the entrance. It looked like the teacher was busy with paperwork in the teacher's lounge. I didn't see her in the hallway. Naturally, yet quickly as a shadow, I entered the classroom. The empty room was full of a strange, stagnant air that you couldn't feel normally. An empty classroom with nobody here. Maybe while no one was around, the desks creep about of their own accord, licking the floors clean of dirt. Yes, very true. It's like Toy Story, but with desks. If I suddenly stepped into a place like that, would the desks in their surprise fly at me, crush my bones, and eat me alive? Dude, like, even his thoughts are insane now. Like, you can't just have normal thoughts.
バカバカしい。
I felt regret at wasting valuable thinking time on stupid delusions. The students' lockers were lined up in the back of the classroom. The one I was looking for wasn't my own. It was a forbidden locker. One I had accidentally discovered one day.
あった。北条、間違いない。
If one person has one locker, then why would only Satoko have two? I'd made a fuss about it once. After that, I learned it was Satoshi's locker, and he had the same last name as her. But of course, even though it was a locker for a student no longer here, looking inside it was still a shameless act. But one time, I let my curiosity get the better of me and took a peek inside. Inside, it was average and worthless. At the time, I hadn't been interested. So until now, I'd forgotten what had been in it. But now that I had, dare I say it, awakened. Oh my goodness. I remembered. The thing that had been there. Scrape. I opened the locker and a stench of mold and sweat wafted out, like a gym storehouse that hadn't been cleaned in weeks. My face puckered up at the stench, but I looked for it. Yes. Satoshi was on Coach's baseball team. Inside the locker was a Hinamizawa fighter's uniform, and it. The one Satoshi used. The metal bat. Yes. This was the reason I wanted to choose this bat. This murder would be carried out by me, but this wasn't originally my role. It was Satoshi's. And I would stand in for him and call myself Satoko's Nini. It was one of the rules for standing in for him. I reached for the metal bat and grasped it firmly. It was light, and yet its tip had enough heft in it, enough to easily imagine the horror if I brought it down with all my might. Satoshi, I'll give you one last chance. I'll give you one last chance to save your sister. Lend me your strength. You're a coward, but I will stand in for you. So if you still care even a little bit about her, you will lend me your strength. There is no more suitable weapon in the world for putting that man to death than your bat. Now, I just needed to figure out where to hide it. Tomorrow, before the act, I would just stop by the school and grab it. Because I couldn't ignore the possibility someone would see me bringing it home and think it was strange. But if I left it here, there wouldn't be a problem. Plus, tomorrow was Sunday. Not only that, it was the day of the biggest festival in the whole village. Nobody would be coming to school. Then, why are you here? Oh, so he's hiding it in the school premises. He just doesn't want it in the locker. I left out the entrance and went over to a construction vehicle parked nearby. We'd been warned by our teacher not to touch it just for laughs, so none of the kids would come near the vehicle either. They wouldn't, because if she found out they touched it, they'd be in huge trouble. I quietly hid it, in the shadow of the vehicle. The chances of someone operating the vehicle tomorrow were slim to none, because tomorrow was Sunday. Government workers had the day off, and from what my classmates had said, the thing had been left here for years now. Machines that haven't been moved in years, you can't just suddenly start them up again. So I was almost definitively fine in this case. The sunlight was piercingly hot. My head grew faint for a moment. Had the heat been this harsh for the entire day? A moment of dulled thoughts like this was a moment of carelessness. I gave myself a couple hits in the head and then looked around warily. Okay. Next, how to dispose of the corpse. Dude, I mean, this is kind of chilling. Like, just seeing him, like, go through with this plan, right? Or, like, set it all up. all this, and the welfare office seems to have realized that they need to do something. So they might legitimately be like planning to do something, and he might just murder him before that. Oh man. Disposing of the corpse. The ultimate way not to create a beginning was to not let the corpse be found. It was even more important than killing him. Thinking on it vaguely, the first thing that came to mind was the swamp. Onigafuchi, the dreadful bottomless swamp revered even now that appeared in the legends of Onigafuchi village. Yes, the swamp called Onigafuchi was here first, and then the village took its name to become Onigafuchi village. In other words, this swamp was the origin of Onigafuchi village. No one, no matter who it was, would float back to the surface of this bottomless swamp. Everyone would be swallowed down into the land of the demons below the earth. Okay, so he just actually believes it's bottomless now. That was how the stories went. Okay, dude. I was like, dude. If I was trying to copy Oyashiro-sama's curse, then I felt that theory demanded I discard the remains and the weapons into the swamp. But they may have said it's bottomless, but I didn't actually know. And people say large creatures like human produce a lot of gas when they rot, granting a lot of buoyancy. It was why using fairly heavy objects to hold people down didn't work. Come to think of it, with the curse the year before last, Rika-chan's mother drowned herself in this swamp. And the criminal behind the dismemberment that went missing the year of the first curse too. It was rumored he tried to discard the body in the swamp and accidentally drowned in it. I never heard of the corpse coming back up or them finding it. Then, shouldn't I choose to discard the corpse there too? I could discard the weapon there. And then, for example, if her uncle came out on a motorcycle and attacked, it would be convenient to get rid of the bike too. I knew that Satoko's uncle generally used a motorcycle for transportation. But as for the corpse, after a lot of worrying, I decided not to discard the corpse in the swamp. The drowning, suicide, and accident were both rumors. Nobody knew if they'd actually happened. There were no lack of false rumors about the drowning suicide anyway, and it was possible the murderer hadn't drowned there and was still on the run. That meant no one had ever confirmed a corpse being dropped in there and then not coming back up. Then what would I do with the body? I thought it might be interesting to go with the first incident, cut him in pieces and hide him, but the preparation and work for dismembering a human body would be difficult given the amount of time I had. Okay, he's just like, I could steal the first one's flow. The fact that he's even considering that, like, look, I feel like there's like a level of difference in a way in my mind right now between like even being willing to kill someone and being willing to then chop them up into pieces and hide that, right? Like, feels like those are two very different levels of insane, and we clearly realize which one Keichi is on, which is not shocking, really. If you've been paying much attention, you can see that this dude, I mean, like, literally premeditated murder. Like, you know, I guess it straight up, if you're at the point of premeditated murder, there really aren't levels to it at the end of the day, right? The only level to it is how many times you're willing to do it, I guess. Whether you're just a murderer or a serial murderer. With that out of the question, I arrived at the conclusion to go with the more orthodox method of burying the body. Then where I would bury it was a question related to where I would kill him. Of course, I wanted to keep my time and proximity to the body at a minimum. With that in mind, I would want to dig the hole to dump the body in beforehand, and to make the location of the act and the hole close together. The choice of where to plan the crime, that I needed to be absolutely careful and thorough with. It had to be somewhere nobody would witness it, in a place with hiding places for a sneak attack. Is he going to do it in like the mountains where all of Satoko's traps are? I could dig a hole for the body right there. I go over the possibilities in my head with the various destinations her uncle would head to from Satoko's house. I imagined a map of the area in my head, and I found a place that fulfilled those conditions so easily it was almost unbelievable. A bit of a back road that went through the woods. I didn't think her uncle would go deeper into the mountains of Yagauchi? However you say that. Go into those mountains on a whim. He was going somewhere he'd pass through these woods first. And nobody used this back way unless they had something to do at Satoko's house or one or two other places. This path was fantastically ideal, as few people used it. I would wait for him in these woods. Would an ambush actually be possible? I went into the trees and tried really hiding myself in a few places. It was extremely quiet. My senses could be sharpened here to their maximum amount. I didn't know when he'd come, but I'd wait right here for Satoko's uncle. I actually had some trouble coming to that decision. The question arose of whether I should somehow call the man out. Was there a risk I'd be taking by luring him here? That man made Satoko do all the shopping and errands. He seldom left on his own business. He wouldn't leave, unless I worked out a plan to force him to, would he? That was the question. Tomorrow was the Watanagashi festival. Would he go out for the festival, or would he stay inside? If he stayed inside, how would I drag him out of his house? That's right. Wouldn't he make Satoko go to the festival? Satoko would go to the festival. Meanwhile, I would call the man. This is the Okonomiya police station. We have the young lady from your house. Could you come and pick her up immediately? It didn't even have to be the police. This is the clinic. The young lady from your house has been injured. Please come and pick her up. Yes, that would work too. If I claimed to be the police or the hospital, told him to come, and then hung up on him, he'd rush there trying to figure out what was going on, wouldn't he? And just the other day, he was visited by a probation officer. He wouldn't suddenly grumble about having to get his niece and not go. It would look like child neglect. The man had no skills useful around the house. Satoko, his slave, was an essential part of his daily life. Conclusion. If he went out to the festival, I would attack him here on his way there or back. If he didn't, I would lure him out by phone. If luring him out by phone was my first step, I needed to be sure Satoko would go to the festival, leaving the house. It would be convenient if I could make Mion take Satoko to the festival. She said her aunt was a district welfare officer, in other words, an ally to the probation officer. If I somehow incited Mion to take Satoko to the festival with her, well, being who she was, she'd use that fact and get her there. Satoko should just take a break and have fun at the festival with everyone. She should have a good time, reminisce on her former peaceful days, and when she went home, everything would be over. Yeah, that would be the best outcome. With that decided, I needed to dig a hole somewhere in the woods to hide the body, so it wouldn't stand out, so it wouldn't be found. Someplace nobody would see me while I was completely exposed as I buried the corpse. I'd wanted it to be close to the scene of the crime, but it naturally grew farther away. Deep in the bosom of the Black Forest. The voices of the Higurashi were the only sounds here, informing me that people shouldn't indiscreetly set foot in this place. Bro didn't think that one out. Digging a hole with so many tree roots crawling around the ground would be far more difficult than I'd envisioned. I snuck a gardening spade out here in my bag, but that wouldn't be enough. Still, as I looked into various approaches, I managed to find a place I could dig into. Tomorrow, I'd bring a real shovel from the storeroom at home. I'd manage with that. I wonder how big a hole would have to be to fit a human all the way into it. I'd probably have to dig pretty deep down, but if I was slipshod in these efforts, I'd let a beginning occur. I absolutely couldn't allow that. Use any amount of time you need to. I mustn't spare any effort to utterly erase him. I glanced at my wristwatch. It was a little past 6. This was probably all I was going to get done here for today. I really wanted to dig the hole in advance tonight, even if it got dark out, but Mom would be upset if I stayed out that late. It wouldn't be good to come off as suspicious to my parents. I needed to go back home and give Mio a call soon. I needed to get her to promise I needed to get her to promise Satoko to take her by tonight. After that, today would be done. Done. Would it be, though? Was this really everything I could do to prepare right now? I decided where to kill him. I decided how to kill him. I decided, of course, how to dispose of the body. I didn't decide on a time, but I would play that by ear. I didn't have a way to decide that. Was that really all? Was this really all right? Have I overlooked anything? Would this really go how I planned? After all this, worries started welling up one after another. It was only natural I'd be anxious. This would be the first and last big job of my lifetime. I cannot allow failure, and I had no experience as this was my first time. I didn't have the know-how, the knack, so it was only natural I'd be anxious. The dark clouds of unease told me doing nothing would be the easiest way. A truly pathetic suggestion this late in the game. Have you forgotten how miserable Satoko looked? From the outside, it may have looked like I was resolute, but deep in my heart, my knees were shaking loudly. I've never actually won a single fight to my satisfaction. Could I really kill someone? I may have been planning an ambush, but my enemy was large and far older than me. He had a scary face, and he looked like he was well accustomed to fighting. Could I have... All the pieces before and after the murder were perfectly planned. What was the actual murder, the most important part? What unsettled me the most? All my preparations, all of my perfectly concealed machinations. If I didn't successfully murder him, they amounted to nothing. Damn it! After coming this far, you're pathetic, Keichi Maibara. If you start to have these kinds of second thoughts, your ulterior motive will be obvious. Let's go home. Go home and calm your mind. Tomorrow will be a juncture in your life, the likes of which graduation, employment, marriage, and childbirth couldn't hold a candle to. The day of murder. To kill someone. For someone else's sake. With that day behind us, we would take it back again. Those mild, spring-like days we never thought would stop. Those safe, peaceful, fun times. I pedaled my bicycle hard to get back home. I felt somehow unsteady, like my body and soul weren't in alignment. A subtle shift between where the tips of my hands and feet really were and where I felt them to be. My vision was a little distant and narrow, as if the great barrier I risked my future life on had nothing to do with me. This is strange. This part right here. My body and soul weren't in alignment. This is one of those things where I'm like, how serious do I need to take this? I don't think I need to take this too seriously. But again, I'll probably just try to keep it in mind. As if the great barrier I risked my future life on had nothing to do with me. An unreal sensation. How could I put it? Everything was so far away. Fine. Feel your unease permeate you, Keichi Maibara. If that will turn your timidity into meticulousness and allow you to act with greater caution, then it's actually an important emotion to feel. This feeling I had never went away that night. So he feels like he's having basically a prolonged out-of-body experience right now. You gotta wonder if that's if that could mean something. I assume it's just I don't know, because the whole thing with him snapping, right? Is that just a mental break, or is it something more than that? That's the big thing I'm trying to think, right? I don't know, in my head, I'm like, what could be more than that? I'm like, I don't know, someone straight up influencing his thoughts and he doesn't realize it, right? And I'm like, how would that work? And I can't think of a real way. So I'm like, yeah, I probably don't need to think about that too much. But it is, again, one of those things I'm just trying to keep in mind. Are his thoughts and actions really his own? It was the first time I'd be calling Mion's house. I searched for her in the phone book the school gave me, then dialed a short phone number, the kind unique to remote places. It was around dinner time. She would probably be home. But just as I started to think nobody would respond, someone finally picked up the receiver.
です。
あ、夜分遅くにすみません。ミオンか？
どちら様です？
俺だよ、ケイチだ。
ああ、ケイちゃんか。何こんな時間に。
She seemed to be in a weirdly good mood, and she drew her syllables out. Right, it's the night before tomorrow's festival, so she's probably with her family having some drinks.
悪いな、こんな時間に。今、時間は大丈夫か？
何？
サトコのことなんだけど。
I heard her draw in a small breath on the other end.
サトコ、大変なことになっちゃったね。大丈夫かな？
The scent of sake had completely disappeared from her voice.
大丈夫なわけないだろ。お前も見ただろ。あれ。あんな、擦り切れるまでにいじめ抜かれて、俺たちはあんなになるまでずっと見捨ててきた。
見捨ててたわけじゃないよ。みんな助けようとして必死に考えてたよ。
Keiichi, you gotta... Okay, look, I'm not exactly cheering you on right now, but if you're gonna murder this guy, you gotta keep your cool right now, right? Because this is a critical part of the plan.
でも、結局何も思いつかなかったし、サトコを救えたわけじゃないだろ。結局、あんなになるまで、俺たちは何もできなかった。
そうだね。私は結局、見てただけかも。
だからさ、せめて、一夜くらい遊ばせてやろうじゃないか。
遊ばせるって？
あいつもいろいろと参ってるのわかるだろう。だからさ、明日の綿流しのお祭りにあいつを連れて行ってやってほしいんだ。
I guess the real question is if you're Mion, why would Keiichi be telling you this instead of just doing it himself?
それは構わないけど。
You gotta wonder, she probably knows.
どうして？
ど どうしてって、せめて祭りの夜くらい息抜きさせてやりたいじゃないか。たとえ一夜でもあの意地悪なおじの元から離れられるなら、短い時間でもきっと聡子は喜ぶ。
だからどうして？
どうしてって何がだよ。
I was having a little difficulty understanding what Mion was asking
ど
me.
うして？ケイちゃんが連れて行ってあげないの？私に頼まなきゃならないの？
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the pretty obvious question. Mion was persistent about odd things. No, maybe it'd be better to say that she was sharp.
俺、実はちょっと明日は用事があってさ、祭りには行けない。だから聡子、ミオンが連れて行ってやってほしい。
用事って。
Dude, you're really not helping your case. Like, you are quite literally just hoping Mion doesn't out you to the police.
大した用事じゃないんだ。多分すぐに片付くと思うけど、ひょっとすると明日は合流できないかもしれない。なあ、ミオン、明日の夜だけ聡子を頼めないか。
Mion took a long time to give her reply. I got the feeling that Mion had been acting weird for a while now. Mion has... Like she was flustered by emotions or something. It's pretty obvious what you're trying to do,
Yeah.
Keichi. Huh? Was that a sob? Mion, are you crying?
私嫌だって言ったじゃない。
She doesn't want to be complicit.
私なんかに押し付けられても困るって。
別に押し付けるつもりなんかないよ。明日の夜だけでいいんだ。
嘘だったじゃない。
What? Mion, what was she talking about?
綿流しの夜だけって言って結局ずっとだった嘘つき。でもおあいこかな。私全然あなたとの約束、あの子はずっとほったらかしだしね。
I had no idea what to say to that. Mion was clearly now talking to someone other than me. Okay, so I think the way I'm reading this is this is exactly what Satoshi did. I was already starting to really feel like it was actually like Satoshi that killed the aunt. Like I had kind of felt that way for a bit. Frankly, I feel like I've kind of been parroting that idea since like chapter 1. That idea that the killer might be the one who gets demoned away, right? And that was like the main one that I thought was kind of a bold take. But right here, it feels like this is like her referencing what happened in the past. I don't know. She like I don't know how to explain it really, but it feels like she's talking to Satoshi because this exact chain of events happened with Satoshi, and then he went missing. The aunt was dead, and so she knows what's going on. Mion was clearly now talking to someone other than me. I didn't know who. All I could do was listen to her in a daze.
あれからずっと帰ってこないのに、あの子のことをもう一度押し付けるためだけに、本当にずるい人。
And now she's saying this is Satoshi on the phone.
ねえ、あなた、サトシ君、なんでしょ
ミオン、さっきから何の話だ。
When I said her name, whatever spell was on Mion was released.
あ、ごめん、なんでもないの。ちょっと、ケイちゃんの今の電話にそっくりな電話を昔受けたことがあって。
それ、ひょっとしてサトシか。
Mion didn't answer. All I could hear were sobs coming through the receiver.
ごめんね。ちょっと私、寝ぼけてるみたい。変なとこで感情的になっちゃった。ごめんね。焦ったでしょ。
I had no idea how it happened, but I was pretty sure that last year, on this very day, Satoshi had called Mion and told her to bring Satoko to the festival, and when she asked why he needed her to do it, he replied the same way I just did.
サトシ、祭りに行かなかったんだな。
うん、 用事があるから自分は行けないって言って、代わりに私にサトコを祭りに連れて行ってくれって。
その時サトシも言ったんだな、サトコを頼むって。
うん、言ったよ。明日の夜だけ頼むってね。ケイちゃんの言い方があまりにもよく似てたんでちょっと思い出して取り乱しちゃった。
I didn't expect this. Satoshi had given her the exact same phone call 1 year ago today, once again acting exactly like Satoshi, huh? His parallels with Satoshi are actually kind of wild. You've really got to feel like there's something up with that. After that, Mion had said more. That he, was lying. That he told her it would only be for the night of the festival.
そうだったな。サトシはその数日後に消えた。
Disappeared might have been a rather vague way to put it. Whether he ran away or not, Satoshi left, abandoning Satoko.
そう、天候でもなく家出でもなく消えたの。
And then, an idea far more indistinct than even fog crossed my mind. Satoshi made exactly the same phone call as me last year. Why would Satoshi make the exact same call? If, in the truest sense, he really made the exact same phone call as I am right now. In the incident where their aunt was beaten to death. Could it...
サトシだ。
え、何が？
Last year, Satoko had been constantly abused by her uncle's wife, their aunt, too. Her aunt abused her the most, and on that night, in the name of Yashiro-sama's curse, she was taken from this world. If I thought about that, everything made perfect sense, didn't it?
去年サトコのおばが殴り殺されたじゃないか。あれサトシってことは考えられないか？
No, but that would mean... But then... Satoshi... He was a coward who abandoned Satoko and ran away, wasn't he? How could Satoshi resolve himself to kill a person to save Satoko? It was unthinkable. I mean, you're the one who's been calling him a coward this whole time. I don't think anyone else has really had that impression of him.
私も実はそれを疑ったことがある。サトシには悪いけど。
A few days later, he disappeared, on Satoko's birthday. When I first heard it, I flew into a rage. What a cruel day to have run away on. But now that I thought about it like this, the story changed completely. Satoshi had probably been even less calm than I was now. He was her big brother, related by blood, watching his little sister be abused day in and day out. Maybe that's why he couldn't keep calm. And that was why the corpse of their aunt, beaten to death, was so easily discovered. Satoshi lost himself in his anger and had hidden the corpse. He permitted a beginning to occur. If the police conducted a full-blown investigation, it was easy to imagine they wouldn't take long to pin down Satoshi as the culprit. Satoshi. He wished for a return to peaceful days with Satoko, and though he achieved it for a time, he had been steadily driven into a corner. I mean, in his case, I think it was like that corner of paranoia, right? And it sounds like Satoshi... I think Satoshi, like, showed much more visible signs, but I don't know. Keichi hasn't exactly been slick either, man. Right? Satoshi, because if we base it on, like, basically, Chapter 1 Keichi was Satoshi, right? I mean, like, suddenly getting the bat and swinging, right? I guess he might have already been playing baseball, but, like, they made it sound like it was a pretty sudden development, right? That he joined the baseball team, right? And was suddenly swinging a bat all the time, right? And then, he wanted to at least hold out until Satoko's birthday, but finally, they nailed him. At the time, Satoshi had been carrying the savings he'd amassed to buy Satoko a giant stuffed animal for a birthday present. He would buy the stuffed animal as her gift, and then get caught. Or he could use the money and disappear. That was the choice he had been forced to make. And he decided not to make Satoko the sister of a murderer. If that was the case, then it must have been an unspeakably bitter decision. All that money he'd saved wanting to see Satoko happy, he had to use it to make her sad. And he used the savings and disappeared to Tokyo, if the rumors were true.
サトシは それで消えたのか。
それはわからない。大石なんかはそう思ってるみたいだけどね。
Oishi. Had he been slowly driven into a corner by that repulsive man's pig-headed pursuit?
確かに状況証拠は揃ってるけど、多分ケイちゃんの推理は外れだと思う。県内のどっかで捕まったろくでなしが犯行を自供したっていうし。
I was right. Deviant had confessed, and the incident was solved. I mean, it's not really hard to force someone into a false confession.
そいつは本当にただの異常者で、ひなみ沢とは何の縁もない男だったって。
He sure picked one hell of a target, right? Picked the exact perfect target. Someone who abused, right? Like, who was like a known abuser within the village. I don't know. Too convenient for me.
もちろんサトシとも何の関係もない。だからそんな奴がサトシの身代わりになって嘘をついてくれたなんて到底思えないし。
I wouldn't be shocked if the guy was like a plant. You couldn't just arbitrarily decide like that. You never know where or how humans are tied together. If that guy took the blame, then it was the perfect crime. Of course, if it really was a perfect crime, there would have been no reason for Satoshi to vanish.
それにサトシには逃亡資金なんてなかったと思う。サトシが預金を下ろした日、
Okay, so he
それ
actually
は
do that.
誰に言っても信じてくれないんだけど、サトコのために買うと言ってたぬいぐるみが売れてショーケースからなくなってたの。きっとサトシが買ったに違いない。
ちょっと待てよ。
Interesting.
逃走資金に使わないでぬいぐるみを買うために使ったなら、サトコのところへ帰るはずだろ。
Well, you can assume he tried to.
ぬいぐるみを買ってそれを届けもせずに蒸発するなんて考えられない。
うん。だからわからなくなっちゃうんだよ。まとまったお金があるならともかく、貯金を全部使っちゃったならサトシは無一文。お金もなく逃亡生活ができるほど世の中は甘くないよ。
That is true. I didn't get it. After all that, I was understanding Satoshi less and less. The two of us fell silent. I couldn't remember how we even got on this topic.
ごめん。どこで話が脱線しちゃったんだか。サトコの件ね。安心していいよ。実はもうちゃんと誘ってあるんだよ。
え、本当かよ。
祭りの準備でみんなで神社に行った時さ、サトコを祭りに呼ぼうって話になったんだよ。それで集会所の電話でそのまま電話して誘ったんだ。おじのやつよそよそしくて勝手にしろみたいな感じだったけど、とりあえず OK はしてくれた。明日みんなで待ち合わせしていくことになってるんだよ。安心した？サトシ。
バカ、俺はサトシじゃないって。
I was a little relieved. I hadn't needed to make the phone call. Satoko had already been invited to the festival. Well, you did make the phone call, and so that leaves even more traces, but not in a way that smelled of blood, a way to leave her uncle alone to create the time for me to kill him. They purely wanted Satoko to enjoy herself, so they invited her. In the end, it was the same, but I was happy for that slight difference.
すまないな。俺が電話をするまでもなかった。昨日にしろ今日にしろ変な話ばかりしてすまないな。
Least suspicious phone calls and conversations. Literally, you are just praying Mion doesn't rat on you. Like, that's what you have to do.
忘れてくれ。
こっちこそ本当に申し訳ない。柄にもなく取り乱しちゃって本当にごめん。
We apologized to each other for a little bit.
じゃあ俺はこれで失礼するな。おやすみ。
何の用事？
As if interrupting our parting words, Mion struck straight where it hurt.
それもまたサトシと同じように言えない？
バカ。だから俺はサトシじゃないって言ってるだろ。
うん。そんなのは分かってるよ。
I deflected her, with a response that wasn't really an answer. Mion didn't hound me anymore after that.
じゃあ今度こそおやすみな。
どうしてケイちゃんがサトシ君と全く同じ電話をしてきたのかわからないけれど、なんでもない。ごめんね。おやすみ。
切るぞ。
Click. Satoshi Hojo, just who are you? I scorned you as a coward who ran away, abandoning his sister. I always thought you didn't have the right to call yourself her Nini. But now I didn't know what to think. Higurashi-sama's curse on the 4th year, their aunt's death, and Satoshi's disappearance. And now, me, trying to carry out a Yashiro-sama's curse on the 5th. Oddly enough, what I was going to do overlapped perfectly with Satoshi, the day before the curse. No, that wasn't all. We start back from Satoko being abused, and I had been overlapping with Satoshi for days already. When I talked to Mio before, she asked me if I was Satoshi. That was the first impression a third party like Mio got, and it was probably true. Then as Satoshi had accomplished, I would succeed in the murder. But that was the extent to which we overlapped. I was far calmer than Satoshi, and more calculating. I could actually grow calmer, the more enthusiastic I became. That's why I wouldn't follow in Satoshi's footsteps. I would snip him cleanly out of the world, and then get our peaceful life back. Maybe Satoshi had been with me ever since I chose to use Satoshi's bat as a weapon. No, maybe even longer than that. When I decided I'd be her Nini, maybe Satoshi had been residing within me then, too. Satoshi, were you really a coward? Or were you a true Nini even now? The kind worthy of Satoko's love. I'd never met him, never spoken to him, didn't even know his face, and yet I felt so connected to him. I'd never felt that way before. Interesting stuff. Okay. Is this going to be a scene transition or a chapter end? This does feel like a decent place for a chapter end, to be honest. It is. Okay, let's read the note on the housewife murder case, then we'll talk about this episode, and this is definitely going to be a double episode again. For the attention of those on the housewife slaughter incident case. July blank, 1982. Okonomiya Police Station, 1st Investigative Division. Chief Takasugi. Blank Prefecture Police Headquarters for the Eradication of Drug-Related Crime. Shishabone Branch Head, blank blank. Regarding Incident Blank, designated as Undercover Investigation. This message is to inform you that a section of the testimony records of an incident under the police headquarters jurisdiction has been found. It is thought to be related to the undercover investigation of the incident in question, Okonomiya Police Station X, Hinamizawa Village housewife slaughter incident. Okay, wait. A section of the testimony records. Okay, so there was an unrelated testimony, well, seemingly unrelated, that seemed to relate to that exact one. During investigation of suspect blank blank, who was arrested for possession of illegal drugs, there was testimony alluding to the crime in question, and it became clear that it contained information that only the perpetrator could have known. Therefore, we are prepared to share this record of testimony with you, duplicate attached. If this testimonial is to be believed, then there is an extremely high chance that suspect blank was the perpetrator in the incident in question. In addition, on receiving this testimony, the head investigator on the case quit on. Wow. What? English. Alright. In addition, on receiving this testimony, the head investigator on the case inquired as to the incident with the Okonomiya Police Station. But the responsible party at Okonomiya Police Station misunderstood, and in compliance with the designation as an undercover investigation by executive order from Prefectural Police Headquarters on July 1st, 1982, General Administration B1-12, they did not explain the incident's existence to the head investigator as they should have. Because of this, the head investigator did not realize the importance of the testimony as it related to the case in question. As a result, was negligent when combing the scene. We apologize for having effectively ignored it until now. In addition, there was a postscript stating that suspect blank blank died while in confinement yesterday on XXX. Okay, I mean, we knew they died in confinement. Okay, so wait, like, what is this saying, though? Right? Because what I'm looking for is any indication that this might have been like a false testimony or forced, right? Something like that. Trying to think. So the testimony itself. Okay, I'm not 100% sure what this means. I'm trying to dig through this. I don't know why this is giving me so much trouble. They even played the wild revelation type music, right? Um, like the one they always play when something's like not adding up, right? Um, and yeah, right now I'm just not getting what's going on. Okay, so two separate incidents are being discussed here, right? And we know obviously which one this is. We don't know what this is at all. Um, they're investigating someone for possession of illegal drugs. Their testimony alluded to the crime, um, like this one, the murder, that only the actual perpetrator could have known. Um, we're prepared to share this record of testimony with you. Duplicate attached. If this is to be believed, and there's an extremely high chance that suspect blank blank was the perpetrator in that incident. So the suspect that they pulled in for this unrelated case is the actual one. They went to ask the Okonomiya police station, but the responsible party at the Okonomiya police station misunderstood, and in compliance with the undercover investigation executive order, they didn't explain the full incident like they should have. And so they didn't know how important this testimony was to the housewife murder case at the time. And as a result, was negligent combing the scene. So there might have been evidence that was completely ignored. The suspect died while in confinement. So I'm trying to figure out if they're implying that. Okay, so like this is what I've been saying. I'm not 100% sure if this is implying that there was an error in who the suspect is, right? And they like the person they brought in on an unrelated thing was the like I'm not sure if this is like them catching the suspect or if this is like them saying the suspect that you guys got is wrong. I'm trying to like piece together which it is, and I'm genuinely just not sure right now. I think it's probably best that I just move on. I don't, because I mean, like when they're talking about them being arrested for possession of illegal drugs, I think of the original suspect. To be honest, and like, why would they have known? Like, but why would they have known this if they weren't the killer, right? Unless it was like Satoshi, like in this, unless this person, um, like I'm kind of wondering if it's Satoshi right here that they're talking about, who's arrested for possession of illegal drugs. Now I don't really know what illegal drugs Satoshi would have had, and that sounds more like the deviant that they found and arrested. Yeah, okay, I might just be kind of lost right now. I might just have to move on. I think it's pretty obvious like what I'm looking for in this, and I'm just not grasping this like I should be, apparently. Hmm. I mean, it sounds like they're just saying there was some error in the investigation at minimum, right? I don't know. Right now, I'm gonna read this as like. Yeah, I don't know. That music playing there makes it sound like this is like some unknown creepy fact, and it makes me wonder if like they got Satoshi in, right? And then he's known to have died in custody, or if they're like, but like I think the deviant did just straight up die in custody, like, so it would make sense for it to be him. Yeah, okay. I apparently just cannot fully decipher what that tip means. I'm not really sure why I'm unable to decipher that one, but I think it's probably just best if I move on for now. So let's talk about this episode. This was an interesting one. Or this episode, it's not done. This chapter. This was an interesting one. So, first of all, I mean, this chapter up to now is just Keiichi's murder plan. Or like, not up to now. Most of this chapter was just Keiichi coming up with his murder plan. He's already, last chapter he resolved to kill Teppei, and that resolve hasn't faded. And so he's trying, like, he really wants to do this and get away with it is the important thing. So he talked to his mother, right, and like about the best perfect crimes in mystery novels, right, that she read. And basically what she ended up saying was like, look, right, think about a story, right, you know, they have a beginning, middle, and end. Right? If there's no beginning, there can't be a middle, there can't be an end. So basically, like, the perfect crime is one that's never found out. Right? Which, yeah, that checks out, right? And so Keiichi's plan is to just make everyone think that Teppei disappeared out of fear of Yashiro-sama's curse again. And to do that, he's going to lure out Teppei. Or he's going to wait until Teppei, like, walks to the festival himself, right, along that back road, and then he's going to kill him there with Satoshi's metal baseball bat, which, to his knowledge, nobody saw him take, and he has successfully hidden. Well, we'll see how successful it is. I feel like I guess he couldn't really parade around town with it, but, so never mind. I was going to say he should have just brought it there now, but, you know, if he got caught with that, probably would have been pretty suspicious. And so the plan is to get it tomorrow and bring it there. Ambush Teppei while he's walking along that path that pretty much nobody walks on, right? And that he thinks only he thinks basically only Hojos and like would walk down it realistically because it's like near Satoko's house. Ambush him there and then kill him there, right? Kill him there and then bring him to a hole that he will have already dug, which he's going to be digging tomorrow in game. And I mean, that's his plan. And I mean, like, on the surface, it's not terrible, but I think he's already left a few trails, right? And the most important one is Mion. Like, by far, it's Mion. So, I mean, the big thing is that the big thing, obviously, is he calls Mion, right, to ask her to bring Satoko to Watanagashi tomorrow. And very quickly, first of all, I think that is already in and of itself, like, incredibly suspicious after he literally just was, like, went to her and was like, yo, what if you killed Teppei, right? I'm like, okay, if Teppei dies or, like, goes missing, dude, Mion's gonna know it was you. Like, straight up, there's no doubt about it. Mion will know it was him, right? So right now, he just has to hope that Mion won't say anything. Which, I don't know, I think there's a decent chance that she wouldn't. But, you know, having to basically put trust in one person and not say anything is bold, right? And the other thing, right, is like, okay, well, no, I mean, that's really his big trace right now, assuming he doesn't get caught in the act or something tomorrow, right? It's Mion, right? And on that call, too, to make matters even worse, it was once again, Keichi was mirroring Satoshi. This has happened a lot of times in this story, and you gotta wonder, is that really a coincidence? I don't really know what could make that not a coincidence. Like literally what would it be? But in chapters 1 and 3, he's acted extremely similar to Satoshi. Why? And the truth is, I don't really know. I don't really know. Yeah, I don't really have anything on that front, to be honest. I don't know, like in my head, I'm like, the only thing I can think of is like, literally, he either got somehow pushed by somebody to be just like Satoshi, right? And I guess the only person I can think of that would have done that is like Irie, kind of, right? I think you could like maybe make an argument that Irie kind of helped really push him onto this path, where this is the point that he's reached like mentally. That's basically it. That's the only one who could have like inadvertently pushed him there. Because in the past, I was like, could it have been Oishi, right? But Oishi was like not a relevant. He has not been a relevant player so far in this chapter, really. Like he showed up. Don't get me wrong, but like I don't think there is any possible way that he is the one who pushed like Keiichi into this. And that was something I'd been wondering in the past if it had been him manipulating Keiichi. It seems a lot less likely now. Then again, it also brings into question, why was everything in chapter 1 so similar? Because Irie wasn't there, so if it was Irie, this chapter, what was it in 1? I don't know. It's kind of a big picture thing that I'm going to need to figure out. Yeah, I don't know. But I think we'll just kind of keep moving on for now. But point is, either way, like someone might be pushing him along. The other possibility, right, I guess, and this is a possibility that isn't a coincidence, right? 2 out of 3 times he acts like Satoshi. You got, like I said, you gotta wonder, is it really a coincidence? I guess the only other possibility I can think of is somehow like we're working with like practically not quite possession, but like influence on someone's mind, right? Like direct influence, like someone else's consciousness is in there too type beat. I don't have any clue how that would have happened though, right? My only theory would be the syringe, right? But where has that syringe showed up this chapter, right? Because the main thing that would maybe make me think that is when he had that kind of like out of body experience, right? When he suddenly snapped like that too, right? Like I'm like, maybe you could argue that was someone else up in there, but like, when would he have gotten this, right? So I'm like, I can't think of a time, right? And so again, I feel like I can't put too much emphasis on that either. I don't know. Right now, I'm gonna have to roll with it being a coincidence that he's been so similar to Satoshi. But the big thing too is we made some revelations about Satoshi. The fact that Satoshi did the exact same thing. That Satoshi, it seems likely that he murdered his aunt, right? And that it kind of got blamed on someone else. And I wouldn't be shocked, frankly, if it was Mion that had, like, found a way to blame it on someone else, right? Like, or just like the Sonozaki influence in general, like with Mion's help, right? Or at Mion's request, perhaps, is the better way to explain that, right? I wouldn't be completely shocked if that was the case. Mion seemed to be not sold on this idea, but I don't know. I right now, I've been believing for a while that Satoshi was the killer, and right now it feels much more likely than it ever did. So I'm going to continue, I think, believing that, but considering the possibility that I guess it's not true. But either way, Satoshi, like, did the same thing, and then he disappeared, right? Presumably, like, apparently he had withdrawn everything from his savings and then bought the bear, right? Or the stuffed animal. I think they said it was a bear. Whatever the gift was that he was trying to get for Satoko, it was gone, right? After he withdrew all his money. But it never made its way to Satoko. And so you gotta wonder, like, I don't know, was that him? Did he try to do that and then get caught? Like, after he had bought it? Terrible timing, by the way. Bro couldn't have made it one more day. Unlucky. Interesting. I just keep thinking about the parallels there. And the big thing, too, is you gotta wonder, is the ending gonna be parallel? Right? Could how things go for Keichi, could it give us more insight into what happened to Satoshi? I don't know. I think the best way to find out, though, is just to keep playing the game. And at this point, I'm kind of out of things to say. I say we just keep moving. And I guess I get to decide. Unless you guys want to pause, I guess if you pause the video and never come back to it, you also get to decide. But I'm going to keep moving. Anyways. Sunday. The fireworks I heard before noon were probably to announce the opening of the festival. And the weather certainly wasn't festival weather. It was cloudy. The television forecast was calling for possible downpour starting this evening and lasting until around midnight. But as long as it wasn't raining at the moment, the festival would go on. The festival had to open, or it wouldn't begin. The Furude Shrine grounds were probably decorated beautifully for the big performance that only happened once a year. Many paper lanterns were hung up, all in the auspicious colors of red and white. The sound of electric motors at the stalls, the voices of kids running around, or happy families watching them, smiling. Today was the festival of Watanagashi. Was everyone already partaking in the festivities? What about Satoko? Had she forgotten her days of suffering just for a few moments, while smiling that brilliant smile she hadn't in so long? This would probably be the longest day of my life. It would be a day I would remember vividly for as long as I lived. I told my parents I'd go to the festival this evening and lounged about during the early afternoon. We may have lived under the same roof, but they couldn't help being surprised by the deviation from how I usually spent my time. Glancing at my parents out of the corner of my eye, I went to the front door. I tied my shoes just a little tighter than normal, as if to express the firmness of my resolve in those knots. When I decided to murder Satoko's uncle, I was in such a state of excitement I almost went crazy. And when I was planning out the act of a murder, which went directly against all the morals fostered in me thus far, I was in such a state of calm I almost thought I had lost my emotions. And then, yesterday, when I learned Satoshi had made exactly the same phone call as me, I didn't know how to describe the muddled feelings I had then. And now, entering today, right now I lacked all the emotions I'd possessed until now. To make a simple analogy, it was the kind of feeling you might get right after you wake up, when you're still half asleep and you don't feel anything very clearly. I had no anger towards that man for the violence he'd committed against Satoko, nor did I feel sadness towards or sympathize with her. I felt no discontent towards my friends, who just waited and watched, never reaching out to her with any help, and no nervousness or fear towards the day that had finally come. What? Yes. Right now, you could say I was in the best possible condition for carrying out a murder. When it came down to it, I would probably need to let my violent emotions take control. No anger towards that man. Interesting. Okay. And that description is kind of funny. That feeling of being half asleep still. I don't know, once again, I'm like, a lot of out-of-body experiences. I don't think this is like that uncommon for like murderers though, right? To feel like out of body. So I'm not going to say that this is inherently like suspicious or supernatural, but again, I just got to keep it in mind. But right up until that moment, I would be like an insect. I would slowly, surely, and silently move towards my one objective, and then when I had my prey, I'd attack like a bullet. There was no emotion in that, just the creeping mindset insects possessed. That sort of sneaking feeling was just the best. I would kill Satoko's uncle like he was a worm. I had to laugh a little at thinking that way, thinking like an insect. Tug. I tightened my laces one more time and walked out the door. I brought the shovel out of the front storeroom. I would need it to dig the man's grave. The shovel was a convenient one made for camping. If I twisted it like so and split it into 3, I could easily hide it in my bag. I twisted the shovel and dismantled it. And even though I'd done it countless times before, I had trouble for some reason. Like I was suddenly clumsy now. I knew why. It wasn't because I was nervous. My weak-willed self, deep within me, was hesitant. I knew that the act of dismantling the shovel was the first step I'd take to becoming a murderer. The last twist was conspicuously difficult, but it finally submitted before the strength of my determination. The area around Satoko's house was outside my circle of activity, but even just riding my bike in the middle of the day like this might seem suspicious to an observant person. I definitely want to avoid meeting and talking to someone I knew. With that in mind, I chose the route to my destination carefully. I didn't mind going the long way around. With how long this day would be, I can never be too careful after all. Still, I was fortunate enough not to run across anybody on my way to the planned site of the crime. I wasn't superstitious at this point, but it was a good omen. The place I would dig the hole was in this grove, a little further into the woods. I was worried I might not make it to the same place as before, since there were no signs to guide me, but I arrived there smoothly and as expected. I took another look around. Not even a hint of human presence. The air was a little bit damp, but it was comfortable in the cool shade of the trees. I took the disassembled shovel out of my bag and began skillfully putting it together. Then, I stuck the tip of the shovel into a soft-looking patch of ground and pushed on it with my foot. The shovel would split into the earth if I put some strength into that foot. The act of doing so seemed awfully like the point of no return, and it made me hesitate. It was just digging a hole with a shovel, but it made me gulp hard. Calm down, Keichi Maibara. Let's do a countdown. Get it done on the count of 3, okay? Alright. 1, 2. I couldn't do it on the countdown, despite it just being sticking the shovel into the ground, and I had to count down 5 or 6 times. Damn it! I'm just digging a hole. This is pathetic. As I thought that, I put strength into my heel like I was stepping on something unpleasant, and split came the sharp noise. Why do I feel like he's going to somehow find a body? It was only soft at the beginning. Roots and stones quickly got in my way, informing me just how hard it was to dig a hole big enough for a person. No decent person would ever come here anyway. Maybe it would be enough to cover him up with some dirt. Every time a naive thought like that crept into my mind, I bit down on it with my teeth and dug even harder. I've dug enough now. I could hide him like this. Every time I thought that, I would go down into the hole, grow disappointed at how shallow it was, and return to digging. The thin layer of sweat on my brow eventually formed into drops and fell to the ground. My back was in even worse shape. My damp shirt adhered to my skin, and it felt so disgusting. The things I couldn't stand the most were the mosquitoes. Bro, I feel that one. You know, I don't feel anything else really going on in your life right now, but I will admit I feel you on the mosquitoes. Maybe they were attracted by the scent of my sweat. The white and black striped mosquitoes would cling to me whenever I let my guard down. It was hot. It was disgusting. I was sticky. I was itchy. All those uncomfortable feelings surged through me in waves. Who's he talking to? I hadn't yelled at anyone. It was me talking to myself, me telling myself something. Why was I feeling this way and digging a hole all the way out here? What benefit would digging this hole give me? What harm would there be in not digging this hole at all? Wait, in the first place, who ordered me to dig? When I thought it over, maybe, ever since grade school, or even before that, my whole life had only been me doing what other people told me to. I didn't mean it was somehow constrained, living a life just based on the commands of others. And I didn't mean I was too lazy to try and find my own road in life. Metaphorically speaking, yes, it was like a road. What? I'd never been particularly physically fit. I didn't hit puberty very early, and if all my classmates and I got in a line, I'd usually be on the shorter end. My scores in jump rope competitions and marathons were the very picture of average. It wasn't like the captains of the dodgeball team would have a passionate rock, paper, scissors contest to see which would get me. During those kindergarten and grade school years, it felt like someone was only worth how fast they grew and how fit they were. Looking back on it now, it was really uncomfortable for me. The thing that turned all that around was just a few words from my mother.
Keichi, あなた塾に入る気はない？学校の勉強がわかるようになって楽しくなるわよ。
The very first test I took at cram school was kind of like a game. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't like the tests with the same exact problems dozens of times in a row. Every question had a picture to it, almost like one of those puzzle books that came with manga magazines. If my studies at school had been like this, it would have been way more fun. Several days later, I went to the cram school again with my mother and the enrollment paperwork. Mom and the person at the cram school had a really long, heated discussion, so I accidentally dozed off and missed most of what they said, but I clearly remember one point. Mom had made a loud groan, surprised at something.
61って平均点が61点ですか？
いえ、違いますよ、お母さん。全国展開する当塾での平均偏差値が61です。簡易式の知能検査でも非凡な数字が出ています。まず申し上げて、前原圭一君は大変に頭がいい。
圭一が？でも学校では大した成績じゃありませんし、通信簿も2、3、4が適当に並ぶ平均的なもので、何かの間違いではありませんか？
いくつかの知能テストとも重ねましたが、その結果、興味深いことが分かりました。前原君は意味を持たない問題に非常に弱いのです。無味乾燥で自身の生活に結びつかない内容の問題に興味が持てないのです。
2+3は分からなくても、リンゴが2個あって3個増やしたら何個にという形なら理解できる。
その通りです。例えば正六面体の展開図を書けと言われて混乱する圭一君も、サイコロを切り開いたらどんな形になるというふうに聞けば見事に答えられるのです。
Okay. Then the person from the cram school showed her a page from one of the exams I took. It was a paper with questions about construction. Construction questions were unusual, so they were really cool, weren't they?
正二十面体の展開図を書けという問題です。この問題を二十面体のサイコロを作るにはどんな風に厚紙を切ればいいと聞き直したら、圭一君はさも簡単そうにこれを書いてみせました。これは平凡なことではありません。
圭一、あなたどこかの本の雑誌の付録か何かで二十面体のサイコロを作ったことがあったの？
Dice only went from 1 to 6. I never even considered that before this test that there were dice with more than 6 sides. So it was fun to imagine what kind of shape a die that went up to 20 would have. If I had a die like that, I could win at Snakes and Ladders against anyone. So I immediately wanted to make it. Finally, I entered cram school. There were only 4 students in the class they put me in, which was called Select. It was the highest class, and some of my classmates were in lower classes. When I remembered how much better they had done at things like dodgeball and the 50-meter sprint, I felt happiness well up within me for the first time. Even if I wasn't as good at them physically, I feel like that was supposed to be as. I triumphed over them in other ways. It was fun at first. The more I did, the more I was praised. My teachers at school suddenly started pampering me, and it felt good. My parents were satisfied too, and I enjoyed seeing them satisfied. The more I listened to my parents' commands, the more fun things got. That did happen, didn't it? I grinned dryly in self-deprecation. Okay, like, what was the point of this? I mean, that's an interesting thing to know about Keiichi, that he's really intelligent, but specifically, like, real-world intelligence, right? Or, like, practical applications. But this is what spurred this, like, tangent. That did happen, didn't it? I grinned dryly in self-deprecation, because, well, my studious lifestyle didn't end up lasting very long. It was only at the beginning I enjoyed learning more and more. I gradually got along less with my friends. My classes were behind what I was learning in cram school. I eventually stopped respecting the teachers, given that they could put me to sleep with their lectures. And, well, I was a disagreeable sort who bragged a lot about how much I knew, and the ways of the world wouldn't let me remain in that state of ecstasy forever. I would do as I was told. Then I'd go above and beyond their expectations, and then they praised me. I was happy for that, and the cycle repeated itself like the wheels on a bike. I thought moving forward like that was how life worked, like a bicycle. When I moved to Hinamizawa, I realized just how inadequate it was. Some things happened, and we started saying how moving and getting a change in atmosphere would be nice. And then my father, he had a place that he liked, that he'd gone to a few times to draw the nature. He started saying that he wanted to bring his atelier there. With me in blank amazement, they decided to move to Hinamizawa. And after that, I met them, didn't I? The first day after transferring here, I went to the classroom with the teacher. I thought it would seem pitiful for her to bring me in there, so I placed my hand on the door before she could, slammed it open, and set foot into the room. Clatter. The thrilling, powerful way I opened that door was none other than my own determination to try doing my life over again. And then, within seconds, that determination took a hard counter to the face. A blackboard eraser fell at me. Plus, there was a huge rock inside. It was a supremely painful trap someone had set up. Oh, come on. Satoko was already beating me right from the first day I transferred? That frightened me. I was bewildered. The class was surprised, too. I wasn't just surprised that the students in the class were all in different grades and were different genders. It was because the room felt completely different from the schools I knew. And as I spent more time with them, my surprise continued to grow. This fresh sense of surprise had never left my life, even to this day. Every day was a fresh new surprise. I've never had a single boring day since coming here. The days were lively, spent with the other club members. We played Old Maid with cards with scratches on the back to cheat. We let all our passions go wild during our games. We went all out as regular participants in tournaments at the toy store in town, and many, many more things. Recently during those times, there was the bento competition. It was then. That's when I saw an unexpected side to Satoko. Thinking back on it, I only ate dinner with her 2 nights. It was such sweet, gentle time spent, and warmed my heart remembering it even now. I realized that Satoko was pretending to be stubborn and firm, and how brave she was, part of her heart always waiting for her Nini to come home. And I vowed to become her Nini. Satoko may have been nagging and overly critical, but she knew how to take care of someone. But though it might have seemed like she was taking the lead, it was actually her way of depending on another person. Even as Satoshi and Satoko's lives as siblings were confined by their uncle and his wife, they were still warm, sunny days. It's kind of reflecting on a lot of things now. When did those sunny days all go wrong? What mistake was made? Lamenting tragedies of the past would do no good, and I told myself that so many times. But I did anyway. Keichi, isn't that why you chose your own path? To take back that life? Nobody ordered you to do this. You decided it on your own. You don't desire anyone's praise for this. You thought it all through yourself. You'll carve it out yourself. And you'll do it now. This wasn't a path I could see very far down, not like the road parents or society could offer. It was a narrow path, dark and utterly distressing, one for which the next step would always be shrouded in darkness. But that disheartening path would keep going on forever. It was an unlimited path, and there was nowhere I couldn't travel. The kind of path only available to those able to imagine where they wanted to go. Don't be ashamed at breaking from the brightly lit, paved road. In fact, feel proud that you found your very own path to walk. I hadn't discarded the paved road either. Once I achieved my goal, I would go back to that bright road, and then I'd spend those average, sunny days at my leisure. So I guess that's what this is all about? Like, in his head, he was like, just for a second, it was like a moment of doubt, like, why am I even doing this, right? And he's like, who told you to do this, right? Like, no one. You carved this path for yourself, right? This is your decision alone. You're not searching for praise, and this is a brand new thing for Keiichi. I guess maybe what got him was that fear of the unknown, because he'd never really experienced that, the fear of the unknown, right? Like, he always walked paths that he could predict where they led, right? And this one, he's choosing his own path, and then he's going to try to go back onto his old path, and I don't think that's going to happen, but, you know, he thinks it will. Anyways, interesting little tidbits about Keiichi's past, really. Kind of showing his current mindset. I don't know. It's really strange to feel pride and all this. I understand, like, you know, you kind of have to be thinking kind of wild to commit and act like this, but I don't know. It seems a little strange to me, but I guess it makes sense in context, so. Crush. When I next realized that the hole had grown so deep I couldn't believe it. Did I dig all this myself?
これだけ掘れば十分じゃないか。
I put my shovel into the bottom of the hole. I would drag the body here, throw it into the hole, and cover it up with dirt. Even if it took me time to camouflage it by putting plants on top, it would all go more easily than digging this hole had. I glanced at my watch. It was almost evening, and I hadn't realized it. I may not have felt the time passing, but digging a hole this deep must have taken quite a lot of time. I took a seat on a slanted rock nearby and wiped the sweat from my brow. Now, once it got a little darker, I'd go get the metal bat I hid in the schoolyard, and I'd make the call to lure him out. And then, I'd do it. The number of things I needed to do to reach that moment were dwindling. I felt that moment closing in on me much more keenly than I did the passage of time. I didn't have any hesitation, but I still felt that. A contradiction. He didn't have any hesitation, but he still felt hesitation. At every step in the process, I had a few chances to hesitate, to turn back, to let myself lose my nerve. Having to endure those million temptations and wait for when the time was right, was an indescribably slow and painful torture. I thought myself acting all weak because of that, but I stopped midway through. This was okay. It was fine. I could detest the abnormal act of homicide as much as I wanted, and it didn't matter. I wasn't going to be a cutthroat killer after today. I'd pass through this strange day and go back to the world I was in before. If I fell to the level of a psychopath who thought nothing of killing, I wouldn't be able to go back to my old life. So this was fine with me. I didn't have to feel ashamed at hesitating to kill, because I was human. It was so funny to me that I'd be the bearer of Oyashiro-sama's curse at the same time I was aware I was human. I exhaled lightly and stood. I concealed my presence and sharpened my senses in all directions to search for anyone around but me. Okay, let's go. One step at a time, I would walk my own path. A path no one had forced me to walk.
行くぞ。前原圭一。
The cicadas made an annoying fuss. Their chorus covered up the suspicious noise of me breaking twigs underfoot, and their chorus filled the path far ahead of me, letting me know I'd be alone for some time. The cicadas blessed the path I walked, encouraging me with every last ounce of strength they had. It's kind of... I kind of like how they always come back to the cicadas, right? And just how in different routes they mean different things to Keichi, right? And it kind of really explains the state of mind that he's in, right? Like in the first chapter, I vividly remember them being the cicadas were a warning, right? Like they were warning you, danger is coming, right? And then when he stopped hearing the cicadas, that was the sign that, oh, danger is here, right? And now it's oh, they're blessing me, right? They're encouraging me, right? Just kind of interesting. The sky was far above. In not even an hour, the veil of night would draw near and the sky would be tinted with dusk. By that time, the Higurashi would let me hear their chorus in place of the cicadas. When that happened, would everything be over with? Would everything have ended? I said something along those lines when I left Satoko's fate up to a public agency. But this time was different. I would do it. I would carry it out. I would end it. It would all be over very soon. Everything would end. What was that? Yes, when the Higurashi cried. Title drop! Sort of. That quick flash through a bunch of scenes was a little strange. Was that just I'm gonna assume that was just a quick little transition, rather than it indicating anything. There was nobody at school. I couldn't hear the playful voices of children. This was the first time I'd seen the school with such a lack of human presence. Literally yesterday? Still, I quieted my breath and looked around, not wanting to be unprepared. It had gotten darker outside, but it was almost like my eyes could see more clearly now. I made absolutely sure of my safety, and walked to the heavy construction machine I'd hidden the metal bat behind. I had a tinge of worry, a premonition, that someone had found the bat and hidden it somewhere else as a prank. If that happened, would I take that as an opportunity to desist? If it really wasn't there, then... The sensation of chilled metal. It was still here where I left it. It hadn't run away. Satoshi hadn't run away. He'd waited here patiently for me.
待たせたな、サトシ。いよいよだが、覚悟はいいか？
Through the metallic touch, Satoshi grins at me in my mind. That's what I should be asking, you know? I did this last year already. Oh, that's what I should be asking, you know? I did this last year already. You should be more worried about yourself.
上等だぜ、サトシ。目に物を見せてやろうぜ。
Okay, Okay, now he's having conversations with Satoshi. Satoshi's back got lighter and lighter, and fit into my hands like it was being absorbed. It didn't feel wrong to swing this. I could move it around so naturally it was like an extension of my own right arm. Of course it felt like that. Satoshi and I were holding one bat together. Next, I would make the call to lure the man out. It wasn't a bad time for it. My friends were doubtlessly parading happily through the stalls. I hadn't considered where to make the call from. My house and Satoko's were pretty far apart. I called from my house, I wouldn't make it. Couldn't I use the school phone? But as I thought, the room was locked up and I couldn't get in. Shit. I'm so naive. Should have at least figured this part out. I couldn't call him, and just for that, was today all over? I'm sorry, Satoshi. And just as I cursed my own naivete, a miracle occurred. A bicycle came into the schoolyard. It was a familiar middle-aged man, the one from the Forest Service field office. Why? Wasn't today Sunday? Was he here to pick up something he forgot? Anyway, the forest officer went around back and felt around in his pocket, and unlocked the door and entered. The best possible coincidence, and it had to be Satoshi who saved me. The metal bat, through just my contact with it, told me this was a chance I couldn't allow to slip by. The sections for the forest office and the school were neatly separated. I felt the man head into the forest office's storehouse, which was so far in the back students weren't allowed into it. The door didn't match its fittings well, so it didn't close all the way, and the gap in the door opened slowly as if to lure me in. I took a deep breath and went in. I tiptoed along, silently and stealthily, and made it into the teacher's lounge. That was the only place with a phone. As I held my breath in the teacher's lounge, I heard the Forest Service officer walking back over. Then the back door clattered shut and was locked. I glanced out the window at the schoolyard, and watched as the man got on his bike like nothing had happened and rode out the school gate. The school once again emptied, becoming deathly silent. I waited for a bit to make sure the silence was the real deal, and reached for the telephone on the principal's desk. I fished Satoko's house phone number out of my pocket. Yes, remember the class directory for Satoko had been the one from their house now, where she lived with her uncle. I touched the dial with my fingers, and then thought for a moment about what to say exactly when he picked up. Despite how many times I'd gone over it in my head last night, now that I had my finger on the dial like this, it started to seep out of my mind like a cracked bucket leaking water. Simple would be best, more importantly to say it straight and not sound suspicious. I counted off 3 heartbeats and spun the dial. Oh lord. We're really getting into the end game now, huh? The call sound. Would Satoko's uncle pick up? Now, of all times, the hope that he wouldn't pick up, and the feeling of the doom and the knowledge that I couldn't save Satoko if he didn't, whirled around in a vortex. It was the voice of a grumpy man, like he had just woken up. He picked up. Say your name so I know you're Hojo, you asshole. It would be terrible if I got it wrong. I made up my mind. I had all the initiative on my side. Here we go.
こちらは下根市沖宮警察です。北条さんのお宅ですか？
I was changing my voice, but did he really think I sounded like an adult? Would he believe I was the police?
はい、北条ですけど。
今、お宅のお嬢さんの北条聡子さんをこちらで保護しています。
え、聡子が？あいつ何かやらかしおりましたか？
He fell for it. I could tell by how tense he was that he didn't doubt my words.
詳しい事情はこちらにいらしてからご説明します。すぐにこちらへ来ていただくことはできますか？
今ですか？風呂に入っちゃったからあんまし表に出たかないんですがね。
What? You don't want to come because you already took a bath?
はい、今すぐです。
すぐ。聡子のやつ何をしちゃったんですか？
詳しい話はこちらでいたします。ではお待ちしていますのでよろしくお願いします。
ちょっと俺警察署がどこかわかんないんだけど。
Yeah.
どこよ場所。
Yeah, you kind of fumbled. I'm gonna be honest, I think you fumbled. You moron. What the hell? Okonomiya police station? I don't know where it is either. Aren't you from around here? Why don't you know that? A greasy sweat came over my body. Eventually, just as I was about to choke, he spoke.
消防署の隣でしたっけ?
This could be bait.
遠いな.
Thank goodness he remembered on his own for me. I didn't care where the police station was, so long as he left his house to get there.
ではお待ちしていますので。
俺警察行ったら誰んとこ訪ねればいいんよ。あんた名前は?
On top of that, he wanted to know my name? Just leave your goddamn house already.
前橋と申します。では失礼します。
That was close. I almost thoughtlessly told him my real name. I managed to change the last syllable of it, but I put the receiver down like I was running away. I'm gonna be honest, I kind of feel like he fumbled there. I don't know. We'll see. My fingers were trembling, and I was soaked with a tepid sweat. I wasn't just nervous about the phone call. With that call, everything had finally been put into motion. I left the school. It was locked before, but it was easy enough to open from the inside. But I couldn't lock it again after I left. In terms of being thorough, I wanted to lock it, but I couldn't waste time going back to the teacher's lounge and looking for the key. I needed to rush back as fast as I could and ambush him. I zoomed back to the scene on my bike. If Satoko's uncle got out of town before I got there, everything would be over. He'd learned there was no one at the station named Maebashi, and things would get pretty messed up. As I returned at full speed, I passed a family wearing yukatas. They must have been on their way to the festival. Many people in Hinamizawa knew my face, though I didn't know theirs. Even just passing by them like this made me uneasy. But I didn't generally come around here, so those living in the area might not have known much about me. That didn't matter right now. I needed to get back as fast as possible, to control my breathing and to ambush that man. I hid my bike in a thicket and picked up Satoshi's bat, which I'd just left hidden in the shade. Then I held my breath, waiting to see someone. I wondered if he still hadn't gotten here. Or maybe he went right out after the phone call and passed by here already. I couldn't figure out which it was, and was set upon by an indescribable impatience. Calm down, Keichi Maibara. Even if he came here already, he'd pass by here on the way back, right? The end result would be the same. It wouldn't change the fact that he'd die. He'd probably be coming on his motorcycle. How would I stop him then? I figured it would be best not to think too hard and just hit him as he passed or beat him out of his seat. The path was made of pebbles. If I hit him as hard as I could and made him lose his balance, he wouldn't be able to help falling. And then, the chorus of the Higurashi stopped. The sound of a bike approached from far away. I couldn't tell what sort of motorcycle it was from its sound, but I'd seen it parked before, so I'd know. It was getting rapidly closer. It was almost here. If he just went a little farther, he'd cross into that thicket and appear in front of me. I took a moment to make sure it was him. And when I had, I'd put my plan into action. Oh, Lord. Well, I guess it's about time to watch Keiichi at least try to murder someone. The motorcycle appeared. Few easily identifiable characteristics told me of Satoko's uncle's bike without a doubt. Was it really him? Was it really Satoko's uncle? I wasn't making a mistake, was I? I looked at its characteristics again. Its color, shape, and most of all, the man's clothes and face. Those last feelings of hesitation, I did away with them. Satoko, now, your Nini will end it, okay? Closer, closer. The bike came closer. Let's go. Satoshi. What? I can hear him. Whoosh. I jumped out of the thicket. I used my shoulder to basically tackle the uncle on the bike with all my might. He gave a dumb shout as his bike completely lost its balance. Finally it fell, the bike scattering clouds of sand, and after spinning, it stopped. Her uncle, tossed to the ground, didn't understand what had just happened and groaned for a few moments, crouched on the ground. Ha. 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 My breathing started to become ragged. No, I couldn't have this emotion. Some weird secretion crossed through my brain and nearly made me hallucinate. Her uncle was groaning. That was the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. What was I doing? All the sounds in the world cut off. My mental chaos from a moment ago withdrew like a lie, and I could feel the temperature in my head rapidly cooling down. The tension in my muscles all went away like the strings they'd been attached to had been cut, and I let my hands dangle at my sides. It wasn't quite like exhaustion. Have you calmed down now, Keichi Maibara? Do you need to remember again why things got to this point today? Scrape, scrape. I stepped over the pebbled path, taking one step, another step, then another towards Satoko's uncle. The more I walked, the more my breathing calmed. The more I walked, the more I felt my body cooling, calming, chilling with frost. Yes, at this moment, this guy had lost permission to live. I had just rescinded it. So he mustn't stay in this world any longer. If he lived any longer, if Satoko's misfortune continued, it would be my responsibility for having allowed him to live. I could feel the cooling substance going through my whole body, even down to my capillaries. Her uncle was at my feet now, still on the ground like an idiot. I smiled coldly at how ridiculous he looked. It's taken an awful long time to get this going. That's all it took. For it to hurt? Satoko's heart hurt much more, and now you're gonna feel that. And with your life, I'll make up for her pain. I erased all unnecessary information from my mind. I prioritized the murder of this man. Execute. 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 Wham! Utterly calmly, I delivered my first strike to the back of his head. I wanted to get at the most effective spot. At least during that first moment, I'd have to attack him while he was at his most defenseless. And if he was hit in the head, he'd cover his head. It was a defensive reaction all humans made, like machines. He used both hands to cover his head, so he couldn't pick himself up off the heap he was in on the ground. Like pounding a caterpillar into the dirt, I hit him over and over. If he covered his head, I'd hit him in the side. If he covered his body, I'd go for his head. If he rolled over, I'd strike his feet, his knees, his elbows. I didn't care where anymore. By just delivering one blow after another, I induced panic in him. I retained my overwhelming advantage, but I hadn't done nearly enough to deliver a fatal wound. Her uncle skillfully pulled himself up off the ground and started to run like a fleeing rabbit. It wasn't a judgment he'd made after seeing my face and deciding whether to fight me. Right now, he was fleeing by instinct, just trying to escape from the threat that had presented itself. The counterattack from the more physically capable uncle was what I was most concerned about. He may have run, but it wasn't all that unlucky. And the odds were in my favor. The uncle didn't run away towards people, but off the path and into the woods. Okay, that's foolish. How pleasant that he would run in a direction where nobody else was. He was fleeing into strange geography, like a rat that instinctively runs into tight spots over and over. Yes, he was no longer human. He was a rat. The blood vessels in my legs expanded, and my total oxygen supply increased. I lowered myself to gain the most explosive velocity I could. Without breathing, I became a wind-like shadow and dashed. I crossed thickets, crushed dead tree branches underfoot, and dove through the woods like a bullet. He ran so cowardly, arms flailing as he went. After catching up to him, I didn't need so much as a blink of an eye to strike him again. My senses, mind and body were all sharpened purely to kill this man. This was the first time I'd felt like this. Well, this was the first experience I'd ever had killing someone. It felt natural continuing to do this for the first time, and that meant I had this much talent for killing. Or perhaps the act of killing was so simple that anyone could do it. I didn't struggle or grow tired at all chasing the clumsily fleeing uncle. No matter how much he ran, it was like trying to get away from his own shadow. He couldn't get away from me. I could easily aim at his back, his shoulder, and his head even from this unnatural stance. Each time I struck him, he wailed in pain and begged pitifully for forgiveness, but it didn't disturb my mind. I was neither excited nor plagued by hesitation like before. I felt sharp. I felt like a carnivore. Of course, so did the uncle, who was trying to run away because he didn't want to die. He didn't want to be eaten, like a herbivore running with all its might, trying to get away. Despite all the attacks, despite all the hits, he kept on fleeing without even staggering. And despite the bad footing in the forest, he impressively never tripped over anything. But there was no need to admire that fact. It was simply proof that he was no more than an animal. If he was chased, he would run. If he was going to be killed, he would run. He bared his fangs at the weak, but couldn't oppose the strong whatsoever. He was lowly, vulgar, a diminutive animal. Such a puny little creature had harmed Satoko. Scar after scar to her body and mind, deep wounds that might not ever go away as long as she lived. Ooh. My cold and calm emotions suddenly turned into bestial ones. My personality changed into something specialized for murder, purely to devour the diminutive animal before me. The uncle gave a puny little shriek, covered his head, and ran. I'm impressed by how much you can run. Bro, you know, there comes a point where, like, you know, he can actually get away. Like, you might actually need to finish this, bro. Fine, run as much as you like. I will be your death. I will choose the moment at my leisure. Your legs will hurt. Your lungs will feel about to burst. Your head will hurt from lack of oxygen. If you feel the pain has become worse than death, then by all means, stop any time. Without turning back, suffocating on his terror of the approaching death, he just ran shamefully onward. He ran, but was chased, his head bashed with a metal bat, sweat and drool flying everywhere, blood clinging to him. From his mouth came the sounds of coarse, irregular breathing and high-pitched screaming that verged on crying. And pleas for forgiveness to someone. I didn't know who. Each and every second was a second of atonement that I granted him. Now, run. Then fall and moan and die. Where did you even crawl out of anyway? You were never here before. If you were never here, you never should have showed up. If you never showed up, our lives would still be fun and enjoyable. We would have gone to today's festival, waited for each other, and gone to the shrine, laughing. We would have been playing amongst the stalls right about now. We'd be browsing the strange food stalls you only saw at festivals, trying to get prizes from goldfish scooping, ring throwing, or target practice. Call back to the last chapters. Neon would surely make it into a competition, and we, as a club, would have a grand time. You know, he can't say he's wrong, though. And everyone would have been cheering for Rika-chan's dedication dance, and everyone would say how fun it was, and it would give us energy for days to come. Fun, enjoyable, and funny. Warm times spent with friends. And that would have happened. But it didn't. Now it was all smashed to pieces. There was no doubt that would be what the world was like if you never showed up. You were the obstacle, the mistake, the heresy in that world. But I would correct that mistake now. I would erase you and make it so this last week never happened. Tonight was the Watanagashi festival. The holy night, where taking just one life was permitted in the name of Oyashiro-sama's curse. It looked like the Higurashi stopped crying at some point. When the Higurashi cried, everything would end. And the Higurashi silenced. Lowly one, the hour of atonement is at an end. The Higurashi have stopped their crying, thus it is the end. The end, the end, the end, the end. Oh, he didn't even say the last time, whatever. You don't have to run away anymore. Die. Those dirty brains of yours smashed everywhere. I don't like doing stuff like that. I'm bad at it. Lightning and thunder struck like an explosion. It was so loud it shook the ground and I smelled gunpowder. The response I got this time was clearly different from the one before. The metal bat crunched into the crown of his head. It was like the top of his head had caved in. The bat felt like it was biting him. Well, I guess you better move him. It had been the final killing attack that visited him. When I didn't overlook the opening he left as his knees gave out under him. I remained alert for a few moments, then thud, thud. He planted both knees in the ground and then fell forwards, burying his head in the ground. I'd been holding back my ragged breathing, but now it all came out of me like a dam bursting. My head was dizzy and light, and unable to maintain my balance, I leaned against a nearby tree. The uncle didn't try and guard his head any longer. After a disgusting sort of spasm, he stopped moving. Did I get him? Did I get him for sure? I fought back my exhausted urge to fall over where I stood, and drew towards him carefully, bat still at the ready. It was possible he was faking it and trying to wait it out. I'm worried that someone, saw this. I mean, Rio was, screaming. Should I check for a pulse? I realized right away, though, how unnecessary that would be. I thought he might be faking it, then I would just have to keep pummeling him until I was satisfied. I fought back my ragged breathing again. Then I swung my bat far above and brought it down. Clunk. His body leaped like a bow, but he didn't try and cover his head. Then once again I aimed for his head and swung. His reaction was the same this time. After spending a few moments making his head into Moki, the hits gradually started to feel different, and it started to spray a filthy, dark red liquid everywhere. That was enough. It was definite now. I had absolutely killed him. There was no sense of accomplishment, nor one of regret. I didn't feel anger towards Satoko's uncle, nor pity towards Satoko herself. Instead, right now, I was feeling like my heart had been stolen by the downpour. It had begun to rain at some point, and how comfortable it felt. The rainwater drenched my body and dripped down to the ground. The excitement within me faded as the rain washed away the grime. In exchange, my shoes were so wet they made splashing sounds. And despite abusing Sachi's bat like that, it wasn't bent very much. There were a few dents in it, probably from hitting the man, but nothing that would make it seem different from before. Instead, it had been stained, with black, with red, with mud and blood. That itself would be evidence. The one piece of evidence needed to prove that my delusions hadn't just been daydreams, and that I'd ended Sato's uncle for all certainty, for all eternity. Alright, Keichi, calm your mind. The time for passion is over. Now is the time to be cold as ice. I needed to bury the body, but where was I? I'd simply followed the man as far as he ran into the darkness. I couldn't take a guess as to how far we'd run. It was already pitch black around us, and the only light I had to go on was the very faint lights on the road a little further down. It was so dark out. I hadn't noticed the darkness until just now. My vision was so good I could see the man's ugly hairline. I could have counted the pores in his head. It was only now that I realized how much crazy strength I had mustered at that moment. Oh my goodness, how far are you? I went over to the street light. I looked up and down the road, desperately trying to figure out where I was. Oh no. This was the one road connecting Hinamizawa to the town. We were unbelievably far from Sachiko's house. Had the two of us really run so far a distance? My surprise at that was accompanied by knowledge of the miraculous fact that despite running so far and making so much noise, we hadn't come across anybody at all. There was a long way between here and the ambush location where I dug the hole. There was no way I could carry the body that far. Wait, aside from that, the bike the man took here was still lying in the middle of that path. That would be an issue. The police could tell whose motorcycle it was by looking at its license plate, and they wouldn't just leave it at that. Thankfully, the corpse was in a dark forest. In terms of urgency, dealing with the bike would come first, and I wanted to get the shovel back from where I'd left it next to the hole. I shouldn't drag the body there. I would have to deal with it right here. Fortunately, the ground was like mud from the downpour and was more sludgy here than where I was before. I might be able to dig a grave quickly here. Of course, my bicycle was still over where I'd left it too. It still wasn't over. Homicide had only been half of my goal. The other half would be just as important as the first. I would completely hide the body, not allowing a beginning to happen. I would erase the man like he'd never existed and regain the peaceful times we had before. I bent my head backwards and calmed my mind even further. The big water drop that struck my brow mercilessly. They were actually quite comfortable, and for a while I let my desire have its way. After confirming that I was sharp again, I started running through the rain. The motorcycle was in the grass at the roadside. Considering how it looked, pelted with rain and covered in mud, it actually seemed like it had been lying there for a very long time. The plan was to drop the motorcycle into the swamp. The swamp was a bit of a walk from here. I lifted the bike up. I didn't think it would be so heavy. I was a little surprised, but once I had it upright, it was fairly easy to roll it along. Still, pushing this thing all the way to the swamp was really not something I wanted to do. I could no longer ignore my exhaustion, and warned me numerous times of how far away the swamp was. This motorcycle, I wonder if I could ride it well enough. Once I got it going, it would be basically the same as a bicycle. Wouldn't it get me to the swamp quickly? A plan suggested by my exhaustion, the anxiety at getting on a motorcycle for the first time withdrew. I turned the key, and you just kicked this pedal, right? Yeah. Vroom. It's on. And then I gripped the handlebars, first the right, then the left. Maybe I twisted them too much. The bike lurched and did a wheelie like an angry horse. I lost it for a second. It was just a problem of how much torque to apply. Let's try that again. This time slowly, gently. That time it went well. It was strange to be on a two-wheeled vehicle that would go even if I didn't pedal. Very odd. But I got used to it quickly. Fiona once told me you could get a scooter license within a day, and she was clearly right. This was pretty easy. I needed to throw the metal bat into the swamp too, but I didn't know how I'd pack the bat onto the motorcycle. Without much other choice, I stuffed it into the back of my shirt, feeling like a ninja carrying a katana. I put the tip down the seat of my pants and hunched over it wouldn't fall out. I got back on the bike and this time got going without any difficulty. You better hope you don't get spotted, like, on the motorcycle and everything. He's leaving the body there too, like if it gets found. His plan didn't quite go like he wanted it to. I will say that much. I mean, you know, he achieved goal number 1, so even if he gets caught now, he did kill Tepe. I carefully pressed the button labeled light, and a rather strong light came on, illuminating the way forward. I probably really shouldn't have turned it on. I didn't have any way of seeing at this point, and had zero confidence I could ride through this darkness. As the rain came down on me, I maintained a precarious balance and inched my way towards the swamp. Along the way, I ran across a few people who seemed to be returning from the festival. While none of them had any interest in me, they were either all soaked through with the rain and hurrying on their ways home, or had their umbrellas low and their heads down. Yesterday I might have been wary of even these passerby, but right now it didn't seem to be much cause for concern. In fact, it would probably be less suspicious to be riding out in the open like this instead of sneaking around. Yeah, but then it takes one person who recognizes that motorcycle. More and more, though, I started to think of that idea as naive, brought on by my exhausted state. I climbed a steep hill. On a bike, the hill would have put me out of breath, but I just had to accelerate a little bit to climb the entire thing. Motorcycles sure are convenient. For a moment, its lights illuminated a sign before I passed by it. Onigafuchi Swamp. Such good children do not play around here. Still, it wasn't like the way to the swamp was cordoned off by a metal fence or anything. Parents and teachers would get mad at you if they found out you were playing at the swamp, but some of the bad kids in my class apparently snuck out here sometimes to see the giant crayfish in the place. They talked before about how they'd go to the candy shop and buy some pickled squid, then just tie it to a fishing line and throw it, and all the crayfish would come running. Once I got up to the bank, there was a tiny ritual shrine and traditional ropes on one of the trees. And, as it swallowed the downpour whole, the blackened swamp had waited for me. If I slammed on the accelerator from the cliff-like stop I was on now, the thing would fly straight into the middle of the swamp. I had to be careful not to fall in with it. If I drowned and disappeared, man, what a stupid ghost story that would be. On the night of Watsunagashi, Satoko's uncle corpse was found in a thicket by the road leading to town, and Keichi Maibara went missing. People would whisper that I'd been demoned away. The 5th year's curse would be a half-baked one. I got off the bike and twisted the accelerator as hard as I could. I let go just when it seemed like it would drag me forward. The bike shot off the cliff and was swallowed down into the swamp, leaving a far fainter splash than I'd imagined. Its surface was being pummeled by the downpour, and the muddy, filthy water was flowing into it. I couldn't even make out the motorbike I'd just thrown in there. It was pretty heavy, after all. It would be quickly engulfed by the soft mud at the bottom of the swamp. And it would be pulled deeper and deeper, until it reached hell itself. I felt no reluctance whatsoever in throwing the man's motorbike down to the land of the demons. But I did have a tinge of regret about Satoshi's bat. I washed the bat with muddy water, and the gore sticking to it came off easily. I had sort of shared today's events with Satoshi. No way they're playing this music. I don't know why, this is not necessarily, just a happy song, right? But something about the start of this song kind of gives off that vibe, right? For some reason, right? It's more sad, reflective, right, is what it is, but it felt so wrong for a second, I'm not gonna lie. I sort of shared today's events with Satoshi, so I wanted to give it a quiet place to stay. That's how I felt. I started to feel more like returning it to the locker from before, so it could continue to keep watch over Satoko.
Satoshi, 俺、多分、お前のこと、誤解してた。
Satoshi listened quietly, without nodding. I'm absolutely convinced now. You were the one who beat your aunt to death last year and saved Satoko. I always scorned you and called you a coward who ran away, but I was wrong. To the rest of the world, some deviant was behind that incident, but I know. That was something you did for her. And then you disappeared. You finally got back that peace, and lost it within days. So, I swear to you that I will live life to the fullest from now on. Live it enough for the both of us. I will live on as though this week, this day, never happened. But I'll never forget this short time we shared together for as long as I live. I didn't know what expression Satoshi made as he listened, but as someone who had protected the same girl, I felt he had smiled and given me his blessing. And then, my hand moved of its own accord, and the bat I had hesitated to throw away left my hands and flew through the air. It traveled its parabolic path, spinning all the while, and the swamp absorbed it without a sound. There weren't even any ripples when it hit the surface. That surface was tempestuous because of the downpour, and the bat was long gone. For a moment, I regretted having thrown it, but I realized that might have been what Satoshi had wanted.
そうだよな。俺はまだ感傷に浸る余裕なんかないんだよな。
Yeah, look, I'm not encouraging what he's done. What I will say, he already murdered someone, right? If he's trying to get away with it, you can't get sentimental now. I would return for my shovel, get on my bike, dig a hole to hide the body, and bury it. It seemed like a simple sequence of events, but I felt extremely exhausted, and I had to do it all tonight. Satoshi left me with only the advice that I needed to finish this up soon, and fell silent for eternity, and disappeared at the bottom of the demon's abyss. I just can't help but feel like he's gonna run into someone he knows here soon. I returned to the path I'd ambushed her uncle on. My bike was hidden, sleeping in the brush. I stood it back up. My whole body felt heavy, but I needed to finish by the end of the day, even if I had to whip myself to do it. Oh, I forgot something. I didn't just come here for my bike. The shovel was here too. Not good. I was zoning out. Every once in a while, if I let my guard down, my vision would almost go black. Pull yourself together, Keichi Maibara. It's still not over. I went into the grove of trees and looked for the hole in which I'd hidden the shovel. Unfortunately, I hid it deep in the forest, not wanting it to be seen, and everything was black in the night, and I couldn't see anything anymore. I reawakened my fading consciousness, and realized just how big this annoyance really was.
おい、マジかよ。
Sweat the rain washed away before came back up to my skin, deep, deep in the forest where the streetlights could never reach. The fact that it would be so pitch black had been completely uncalculated. With this much darkness, even if I had been able to kill him right away like I'd planned, I didn't know if I still could have buried him without a problem. What should I do? I simply couldn't find the shovel tonight. If I forced myself to go deep into the forest, I'd lose even my sense of direction and might actually get lost in there. That might have been an exaggeration, but it was fully possible I'd trip over a tree root and sprain a muscle. Oh, right. My house's storage room. There was another shovel there. Same fold-up kind. Couldn't I go back to the house, get the shovel, and give up on finding the shovel tonight? It's not as though the name Maibara is written on the shovel, but it seemed like an unusual item from an important variety store made in another country, so I didn't want to leave that shovel here. But in this darkness, I couldn't do anything. I should give up and go back to the storage room. And there was an electric lantern in there. If I used that for light, I could look for it. But it was so extremely dark. Could I light the way with just the lantern? The light of a lantern in this dark night. I couldn't discard the possibility of it drawing eyes. And I doubted if I could find the shovel with the lantern's feeble light. Besides, I'd left the body there for a pretty long time already. My sense of fear, dulled through excessive exhaustion, finally reared its ugly head. Anyway, for now, the most important thing was to hide the body. A shovel being found wouldn't be a big deal, but a corpse? If they found that, I'd share the same fate as Satoshi. First, I'd go back to the storage room at home. Then I'd get the lantern. Now that it's gotten this dark, I might still need light to dig a hole for the body too, and I'd get the other shovel. And then I'd deal with the body first thing. Once that was done, I'd come back here, find the shovel, and bring it back. I had to. I had to do at least that much. I was so tired. But complaining was getting me nowhere. I don't even know if he's gonna have it in him. Like, I can imagine the act of beating someone to death with a baseball bat after sprinting to keep up with them and chase them. I can imagine that would be pretty exhausting. And this is after digging a hole already, and now he has to dig another one. If I started getting complacent now, everything will have been for naught. At some point I had sat down. I gritted my teeth and endured, lifting my heavy hips. The night was young. Of all the nights I'd experienced, none had ever been this long. When would it all end? The night was young. Jeez. This has been a wild sequence of events, and it doesn't seem to be over just yet. The lights at home were dazzlingly bright. Suddenly they reminded me of how hungry I was. I checked the clock. Saw that it was almost 7. I thought for sure it was 2 or 3 in the morning already. I was surprised at how messed up my biological clock had gotten just from this one night. There was a warm light coming from the curtains in the living room window. The worlds between here and what was beyond those curtains were so different. If only that man hadn't shown up, I would have been in that light. I'd still be excited from the festival, and I'd be talking to my parents about how much fun I had with all of my friends. And then, even though they made a hot meal for me, I would have eaten way too much at the stalls, barely eaten any of it, and gone back to my room. No doubt I'd crawl into my futon and easily let myself fall asleep. But right now, I was completely different. There wasn't a single ember of warmth from those weak streetlights. Right now, I was unconnected to any time spent with my family. There was neither warm food, nor the time to allow myself to sleep. My body exposed to the cold rain, I knew that I simply had to spur myself on to accomplish what I must. I realized how timid, how cowardly I was becoming. For what purpose did I need to kill someone so badly? That it was worth feeling this terrible. I lost sight of that purpose. I selected the fastest, most fundamental way of saving Satoko. and executed it without hesitation. That man was dead. He was gone. He would never, ever hurt Satoko again. We all thought frantically for days on end about Satoko's problem, and finally, with no options, we gave up, and I had solved it in one night. By myself, without anyone's help. Right about now, Satoko would be making dinner for her uncle, despite not knowing when he'd return, and she might be spending the night trembling in fear of whether he'd yell at her for how it tasted. But her uncle wouldn't come home. She wouldn't have to fear his wrath, nor let him make her feel sad. I see. I did it. I successfully saved Satoko. All I'd been thinking about for a long time was killing that man, and I'd forgotten the feeling that it was actually all to save her.
そっか
Oh, we love the creepy laugh. I did something good. Oh, that's one way to put it. I can't disagree with in a way it's like you can't disagree with the motive, but you can disagree with the method of murder, right? Like, as in the method being murder, not how he did the murder. That's right. I did something good, didn't I? I felt hot tears coming from my eyes. And that's when I first realized that the exhaustion I'd been feeling was actually guilt. The blade of guilt, for a while now, had just been scraping away with its tip, hurting my heart. It hurt so bad I couldn't stand it. It was throbbing painfully. It hurt so much, it was so painful that I cried. I cried tears of joy at saving Satoko. I didn't know why, really, anymore. I just cried. My tears fell and fell. As I stood there for a while, coming to terms with those warm tears, my heart was comforted a little. All right, Keichi Maibara, that's enough. There's nothing to regret or feel ashamed about. Both my body and mind were thoroughly exhausted, and that was a fact. It was only natural I couldn't feel anything. Even tomorrow and the day after that, I might not be able to feel anything for a while. But there was one thing that was true. There was the indisputable fact that I had saved Satoko. One day, we would surely be rewarded. One day, I would be proud of how distressing an enterprise I had undertaken to get Satoko's smile back. And so that I could wait for that day, I had to put the finishing touches on this night. If I left it undone, everything I'd accomplished today would be for naught. I don't think he's going to be able to fully go through with it, like, successfully. I don't think there's any way this ends like he wants it to. That would really shock me. I looked back up at the sky, which didn't look like it would stop raining anytime soon. Then I rubbed my eyes and summoned forth energy from my core again. How long did I plan on spacing out? This isn't the time for daydreaming. Someone could find that corpse this very moment. That pessimistic thought was proof the very natural emotion of fear had returned to me. As I allowed the fear to spur me onwards, I went to look for the other shovel and the lantern inside the storage room. It was fortunate. I remembered what it looked like around the streetlight the body was near. With how dark it was quite possible I wouldn't have even been able to look for it either. I didn't realize that when I left the place, so the idea of memorizing the spot hadn't even crossed my mind. And that's why I had to call it fortunate that I managed to get back to the body like this. The corpse was now located in a big, muddy pile. Half the thing had already sunk into the swamp-like pool of water. I only realized afterward, but there was an unused irrigation channel right nearby clogged with fallen leaves and dirt. There was rainwater flowing in from there. My shoes had been awash with water for a long time now, so without any hesitation I stepped into the puddle. Luckily, the whole muddy stream washed it all away. I couldn't leave any slight traces, like bloodstains. The rain was like a blessing from heaven. I checked around me, paying very close attention, then turned off the lantern. It became pitch black, but my eyes got used to the darkness in a few moments. And once I managed to reach the streetlight on the other side, I was able to make out even faint lights. I stuck the shovel into the puddle right next to the corpse. The ground was even looser here than I thought, and the shovel's tip easily slid inside it. I had to hurry and dig. If I took too much time, I might lose my energy and strength again. It felt almost like digging a hole in the sand at the beach. It was easy to dig, but no matter what, the muddy water kept flowing in, covering the hole. The digging wasn't going as well as I'd hoped. I dug, and the water would go in, so I wouldn't get a sense of how deep it was. The only way for me to measure it was to bury my own foot in the mud. I'm digging just fine. It's all right. Don't be disheartened. Dig. 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 Occasionally a car would come by on the road, and I'd hurry to hide myself in the trees. Everyone was only passing through. They wouldn't have their eyes peeled in this kind of darkness. I understood it logically, but I still couldn't help but hide. What I was really scared of wasn't quite that one of those cars would coincidentally happen to witness me here. It was that the distance I could spot cars from was getting gradually shorter. First, I noticed the splashing sounds from really far away as cars drove through them. I started noticing them less and less, and with the car that just passed by, I didn't notice until its headlights were upon me, but my senses growing duller by the second. If someone were to take a peek in secret that I was burying the body at the worst possible time, maybe I wouldn't even notice. The moment I thought that, I took a good look all around me. I roused all my half-asleep senses and searched for signs of presence nearby. What if I found out someone was spying on me from the trees? A carnivorous feeling snarled at me, glaring. If there was, then I would dig another hole. I'd come this far already. In order to achieve perfection, I didn't care how much more I had to pay. I didn't know what kind of face I was making at the time, but it was definitely a fervently glaring one. Bro sounds like a zombie. My five senses reached the conclusion that nobody was present. I didn't breathe a sigh of relief. How long had I been digging this mud out of here? It was deep enough for it to go up to my knees. Maybe this was enough. Maybe I'd throw the corpse in as a test. Bro, if you throw it in, good luck getting it back out. I swallowed, getting my breathing under control. Despite how much I'd beaten him, I was afraid of touching the corpse. So instead, I dragged it by the feet to the hole. It took more than just a waggle and a tug to do it, but of course it did. Considering this man's weight was easily 80 kilograms, I rallied all my strength and dragged him. At this point, my groundless fears that he might suddenly start moving again had vanished long ago. His body fit perfectly into the muddy hole. It was more than deep enough. All right, let's bury him. Quickly, quickly, quickly. If I did a perfect job of burying it here, everything would be over. I would hide it in the hole, and none of this would have ever happened. When I realized I only had a little farther to go to finish everything, I was racked with pointless anxiety, like I was in a race against time. It was like I was absorbed in a delusion that if I didn't bury the body quickly, it might come back to life. In any case, in a great rush, I poured mud and dirt into the hole. If I didn't work efficiently, someone might find me here. Until now, I figured if someone saw, I'd just kill them. But not anymore. I was arrested with such absolute fear that if someone saw me, it would all be over. As I finished the work off, it was a total mess. Splish, splash, squish, squash. I drew the surface of the shovel across the ground, trying to make it flat. I was completely covered in mud at that point. The rain washed the mud off my body, and not off my now blackened clothing. My body and mind were caked with panic, with fear, with rain and sweat and mud. My shoulders heaving, I threw down the shovel and sat down in the mud. I was so exhausted that I wanted to lie down right here and sleep. It was over. This time. For real. It was over. The man was now in the bottom of the wet dirt. Right this moment, there were traces that this place had been dug up, but the rain and flowing muddy water would completely cover it all within moments. Yes, it was over. I keep expecting, like, Oishi to show up, like...
Yatta. Yatta. Yatta zo! Kuso dare!
I might want to chill out. Then I fell over backwards, face up in the mud. Raindrops pelted my face without mercy, but I didn't care. After staying there for a while, resting my mind, I got up again. It was over, so let's go home. You already buried the whole thing, so now it's like it never happened. It never happened, so there's no reason for me to stay out here and get rained on. I wobbled to my feet. I wouldn't use the shovel anymore. I considered disassembling it, but I didn't have the strength in my absolute exhaustion. I didn't really need to take it apart anyway. Dragging the shovel behind me, I headed towards the light. Dragging it? Bro's leaving a trail. What are you doing? I stood up my bike. It had been laying on the grass by the road. I didn't know how I was going to get the still assembled shovel into the front basket. I put the shovel down on the back of my shirt like I'd done with the baseball bat. Unlike the bat, the corner of it was on my back, making it very painful. Plus, if I relaxed my posture even a little, it would fall out behind me. I ended up having to carry the shovel in my left hand and ride my bike using only my right hand. Not only was I in a state of total exhaustion, this was a downpour. One hand on the handlebars, I was swaying to and fro like a drunk. But I didn't care. Even swaying like this, I got a little closer to home every time I pedaled. I saw two lights swaying slowly in front of me. A car was approaching. Oh no, I need to get out of the way. From far away in the shadows of the darkness, a car appeared. Its dazzling lights washed over me. The driver made a short honk of the horn to inform me I was in the middle of the road. I have to get out of the way. I kept telling myself that, and not only was I riding one-handed, I was exhausted, so I couldn't do anything. Wobble, 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 wobble. I meandered about, not going to the right or the left. The driver decided to swerve out of the way right in front of me, and without lowering its speed much, steadily came towards me. Its outline grew larger in my vision. Telling myself again that I really needed to get out of the way, I jerked the handlebars in one direction and lost my balance and fell over, bike and all. My whole body splayed out, and one foot got caught in the bike. This was seriously bad. My drowsiness quickly vanished, and just as a cold sweat broke out on my skin, the driver recklessly spun the wheel to the left, made a counterclockwise U-turn, and came right up to me and stopped. The driver's seat door opened, and the driver came out. Is it going to be Oishi? You idiot! What are you doing here? I was pretty sure someone would yell at me like that. Oh my god, it's Takano. It was a woman's voice, and one I knew. I lifted my face off the ground and looked at her.
Takano-san.
こんばんは。月の綺麗な夜ね。前原くん。
It was raining far too hard to see the moon. Takano-san unfolded an umbrella and smiled as she spoke. That smile was, for some reason, uncanny, like she'd seen right through me. I mean, like, she probably sees you out here, exhausted, after basically telling her, like, yo, wouldn't it be crazy if Tepe died? Wouldn't that be crazy? What are the odds? You're exhausted and you have a shovel. Like, I think she can put two and two together, bro. Out of all the people I could have met, I got the sudden feeling that this was the one I wanted to see the least.
こんな時間にどうしたのかしら。傘もささずに全身ずぶ濡れの泥まみれで。それは何？シャベル？
She'd come here by a car. She wouldn't have known what I was just doing. And yet, she smiled, as though she knew everything. Calm down, Keichi Maibara. She always makes that mysterious-looking smile, remember? Don't let her on to anything, lest you dig your own grave.
噂じゃあなた、ゴルフクラブで野球に参加したそうだけど、そのシャベルも、つまりはそういうこと？傘の代わりってわけかしら？
Very true, yes. You nailed it. Good stuff, Takano. I should tell a good lie here. I could just do that. Things would work out.
レナと宝探しにダム現場に行った時にこれを忘れてきちゃったんですよ。
それをこの土砂降りの中取りに行ったわけ？
家を出た時は降るとは思いませんでしたので。
あら、降り出したのは結構前よ。あなたずいぶん前から表にいるのね。
Yeah, you're not very convincing right now, bro.
まあほっつき歩いてましたから。
それにしたあなた向こうからこっちに向かってきたんでしょ。ダムとは場所も方向も正反対よ。
Oof, busted. Takano-san was clearly aware that something exceedingly abnormal was happening with me. And as she played her little word games, she was enjoying driving me into a corner. Maybe she had a vague guess, just from the situation, of what I'd been doing. My timing really sucked, to run into her of all people, of all the times. At the very end, I could only be frustrated at my terrible luck. I'd done so much, and the end was literally right around the corner. So why, at the very, very end, did I run into her, of all people? What do you do, Keiichi Maibara? You're still holding something that could be a dangerous weapon. Will you silence Takano-san? Bro, you don't have the energy for it. Even if it would be simple to kill Takano-san, dealing with the car she'd come in afterward would be an issue. I couldn't drive a car. It was completely different from a motorbike. But even if the car was here, as long as there was no proof I killed her. Yes, in tonight's downpour, without any prior planning, all by coincidence, a hit and run. As long as I didn't drop any handkerchiefs with my initials on them, they would never know I killed her. A black flame quietly smoldered and raged in the core of my body.
怖い顔、いじめすぎちゃったかしら。
Takano-san started to laugh by herself, then thankfully stopped talking about it. But the dark clouds in my mind didn't go away.
それはそうと、いつまで自転車にまたがったまま地面に這いつくばってるつもり？そろそろどいてくれるかしら。
If I moved, she would leave. So I tried to get the bicycle up and out of the way, and then twisted my ankle in it and fell over. There was a sharp pain in the ankle I'd twisted. This is nonsense. A sprained ankle? Now?
あら、大丈夫？ひょっとしてひねっちゃった？
Ugh. There's a non-zero chance that she just doesn't care, so maybe that's our saving grace, but... Takano-san squats down and takes a good look at the ankle I keep rubbing. She compares it to my facial expression, apparently trying to gauge how bad the wound was.
立てる？
I didn't expect to, but I couldn't even stand up. It was all I could do to shamelessly wriggle on the ground like a caterpillar. Takano-san looked at her watch, then at her car, and after thinking for a moment, opened the passenger seat door, and then gave me her shoulder to stand up with.
家まで送るわ。なんだか私が跳ねたみたいで嫌な気持ちだけどね。
すみません。
見捨てるのも気の毒だし。
I mean, if she acts none the wiser, I don't know, this could kind of work. Just say, like, I twisted my ankle on the way back, I was stuck, I couldn't walk, right? And then boom, Takano finds you. I mean, that's a decent cover story, I'm just saying.
私が優しい人でよかったわね。
Although that's assuming Takano is, like, just gonna look all this over, which it's Takano, she very well could, but, like, we'll see. Nobody good has ever called themselves a nice person, but that would have been a terrible thing to say to someone holding me up like this. I took Takano's hands and sat down in the passenger seat. Takano-san went around the back and looked at my bike on the ground.
自転車は後日ってことにはならない？
I could clearly tell from her face that she thought it would be a pain, since it would be heavy, get her car dirty. But my bike has the name of my bar written on it. I couldn't leave it out here like this.
なんとか車に詰めませんか？ないと困るんで。
トランクはもういっぱいなの。後部座席なんかに積んだらシートが泥で汚れちゃうわ。まあ、あなたを乗せた時点でもう十分に汚れてるんだけれども。
I turned back to the back seat and see someone's folding bicycle there already. What? It still looked big enough to fit my bike in there as well. My expression reflected my thoughts, and the exact thoughts seemed to get through to her. Whose bike is
わ
that?
かったわわかったわ。積んであげる。今夜だけはお姉さんも優しくしてあげるわ。
Why do I feel like she's got a body in the trunk? Takano-san continued with her mean jokes, but she hoisted my bike and loaded it into the back seat for me. The mean jokes were one thing, but couldn't she do something about that eerie smile of hers? And even more importantly than the bike, I didn't want to leave the shovel here. The shovel could be directly connected to the buried body and to me.
ついでで申し訳ないんですけど、シャベルもお願いしていいですか？
Takano-san gave me a clearly dubious expression.
シャベル？別にいいけど大事なもの？
The more I talk, the worse it gets for me. That's how I felt, so I didn't force myself to answer her. Eventually, outlasted by my silence, Takano-san gave a short shrug and sighed. I feel like she just got done murdering someone
はい
herself.
わかったわ。
Bro, she might have used the hole you dug.
僕はシャベルがないと困っちゃうんでしょ。そんな怖い目しなくてもいいわよ。
Takano-san brought over the shovel that was lying in the middle of the road. I clutched it like I'd never let go of it again. Takano-san watched me with a puzzled look.
じゃあ行くわよ。前原くんのお家ってあの前原屋敷でいいんでしょ？
I mean, yeah, that's a pretty safe assumption.
なんでみんなうちのことを前原屋敷って呼ぶんですか？
Bro, have you looked at the size of the thing?
だって現にお屋敷じゃない。お金持ちが羨ましいわ。
As she spoke, Takano-san pulled the handbrake and stepped on the gas. After making a skillful U-turn using the shoulder of the road, she steadily increased in speed. From the rearview mirror, that accursed place seemed to melt into the darkness.
慣れた？
すみません。よく聞こえませんでした。今なんて？
Takano-san suddenly tried to say something to me, but thoughtlessly I didn't catch it. Looking ahead, Takano-san said the same thing to me one more time.
したい。上手に埋められた？
I mean, it was pretty obvious she knew, but she's just like, yo, did you execute this? Like, did you cook? Or did you mess this up? You better not have messed this up. I thought my heart might beat out of my chest, but I didn't let it show. But my lungs were squeezed tight, and I couldn't breathe.
何を言ってるんですか？
こういう山奥に死体を埋めるときはね、結構深く掘らないと野犬とかが匂いを嗅ぎつけて掘り返しちゃうことも多いのよ。野犬が加えてた人骨で事件が発覚、警察一帯を山狩りへなんて結構ないことじゃないのよ。
Pound, pound, clang, clang. Huge rusted bells started ringing in my head. Had I buried it so deep that I could say it absolutely wouldn't be found? No, dude, it was only up to your knee. Like, that is not that deep. The answer was no. I was in such a rush to bury him and get it over with that I couldn't deny having possibly buried it too close to the surface. No, wait. That's not... Wait, anyway. This woman, how does she know? Bro, she's like, bro, you pretty obviously sold this one. You made it pretty obvious you wanted that man dead, and you're out here in the rain, clearly lying to her, exhausted with a shovel. Like, she had just passed by here in her car by coincidence. We ran into each other by coincidence. If she had been watching the entire thing from the trees, and once I left, she came back in her car, it didn't make logical sense. So then, why? Keichi Maibara. That's it. You need to kill her. My entire body reawakened, and I could feel my pupils dilate. I couldn't possibly beat her to death with a shovel in such a small car. Then I would use my hands and strangle her. Dude, you do not have the strength for that right now. But she was driving right now. If I strangled her, we might get into an accident. Then suddenly, Takano-san turned and looked at me.
ボケもツッコミもなし。
For a moment I was surprised. What was she talking about?
私たちあんまり相性は良くないみたいね。
Takano-san said, disappointed, returning her gaze ahead. I repeated the words she said a few times in my head, and finally realized she'd meant it as an off-color joke. I didn't know whether it was really a joke, but I wouldn't be able to fool her no matter how many lies I told. Right now, if they're driving the car like this, I couldn't kill her. I would have an even harder time doing it when we got back to my house. That moment we met, that had been my best chance. I've missed it so easily. It hurt. After that, Takano-san didn't say a single word. Dude, I'm not really sure that was a off-color joke, like you're claiming. I think she's dead serious, and she knows, but... The car was completely buried in an almost suffocating silence. What kind of woman had I run into? With everything that happened today, I managed to pull it off, and at the very end of it all, I just had to go home and go back to sleep. But bad luck. As my sleepiness gradually overtook me, the anxiety I felt steadily started to matter less and less. Is this alright, Keichi Maibara? You probably should not leave this woman alive. Right now, I'm tired. She stepped on the brakes and I jerked against my seatbelt. Oh, that woke me up. I thought I must have fallen asleep by accident. I looked out the window, and there was a big building with faint lights on. It was really dark out, but I knew immediately it was my house.
今ご家族を呼んでくるわね。少しの間だけど、一人でお留守番で。
バカにしないでください。それにほら、もう大丈夫です。一人で歩けますから。
あらあら、さっきは痛そうな顔して肩まで借りたのに。
It's the adrenaline, I guess.
ひょっとしてお姉さんに甘えてみたかったから。
As Takano-san spoke, she left the car and opened up her umbrella. The sound of falling raindrops was fierce, as always. I carefully reached down and rubbed the ankle I'd twisted. There was still some pain and a little weirdness, but they weren't that bad anymore. Rather than being happy about how light the wound was, I first regretted this whole thing. If I hadn't twisted my ankle, I could have still taken the option of killing Takano-san right then and there. There probably wasn't much doubt that Takano-san was convinced I was involved in some sort of crime. She knew about everything happening with Satoko, and she might have even guessed I'd killed somebody. Click. Takano-san opened the passenger side door for me.
本当に肩は必要ない
Bro,
か
why
し
am I
ら。
like low-key worried it's gonna be like Satoko in the trunk? Like,
もう一回だけ甘えてもいいのよ。
I ignored her and answered by getting out of the car by myself. The rain was still pretty intense. I got my bicycle out of the back seat. I was a bit curious who the other bike belonged to, but that didn't matter right now. I let Takano-san hold the umbrella over me and pushed my bicycle up to the front door.
ありがとうございます。もうここまでで大丈夫です。
My ankle hurt so much earlier, and it still did, but it aggravated me that it hadn't even been that bad. It was really, seriously, terrible luck.
じゃあ私はこれで失礼するわね。前原くんと二人きりで夜のドライブだったなんてみんなには内緒よ。
Yeah, bro, she probably has just as much to hide as you. I'm gonna be honest.
特に二郎さんにはね。
Jiro-san? Oh, she meant Tomatake-san. I suppose she called him by his first name. His full name must be Chiro Tomatake, then. And then, the other bike, the folding one in the back seat that I didn't care about at first, suddenly came to mind. Hey, excuse me, you're from Hinamizawa, right? On the day before yesterday, as I walked near the dam, half asleep, Tomatake-san had talked to me. Oh, is it Tomatake? Is it his bike? And the bicycle he'd been riding, it was...
あの後ろに積んであった自転車、富武さんのですよね。
Takano-san's eyes, I think they sharpened for a moment.
どうしてそう思うのかしら。
以前に会った時見てますから。
And now you're gonna get killed, bro.
フレームも特徴的でしたし。
でもおかしくないかしら。この自転車が二郎さんのものだなんてことありえると思う？
I think it's very possible that Tomatake is in your trunk right now.
おかしいって。え？
Takano-san, her hair elegantly fluttering, peers into my eyes.
だって
It might be best to just move on, bro.
ひなみ沢には民宿なんてないのよ。なら二郎さんは町に泊まっていることになるわよね。
That's true. He said he was at an inn. I guess it could just be like someone's house, like a 1980s Airbnb.
そうなんですか？まあ、そうならそうなんじゃないですか？
町からひなみ沢まではとても歩いてなんか行き来できないわよね。バスだって走ってないし、せめて自転車くらいはなきゃね。
She didn't need to tell me all that. Right? That's why Jiro-san was riding a bike.
その二郎さんの自転車が私の車に積んであって、二郎さんは私の車に乗っていないならおかしいじゃない。二郎さんはひなみ沢で自転車なしってことになっちゃうわよ。二郎さんを放っておいて自転車だけが私の車に積んであるなんてね。
Did he fumble the bag by just asking a question he shouldn't have? How do you keep doing this?
ありえないでしょ。
As she spoke, Takano-san made eyes like a hawk. Unfortunately, I didn't really understand. What was so odd?
それの何がおかしいんですか？高野さんは富武さんとは仲がいいんですよね。何かのようで自転車を積んであげたって別におかしいことだとは思わないですけれど。
そうじゃないでしょ。つまりこのひなみ沢において二郎さんとその自転車がバラバラに存在することはありえないということなのよ。
Is she like telling him he is in the car?
以上の理由からこの自転車が二郎さんのものであるわけがない。
No, okay, not at all. I cap. She's trying to convince him it isn't, so I'd say she probably killed Tomatake and is basically trying to tell him, you saw nothing. And then, you know, maybe she'll throw in a, you saw nothing, I saw nothing. And they just move on with their lives.
理解できたかしら？
Takano-san's roundabout way of talking was hard to comprehend. That eeriness I could feel, that vague dreadfulness, I didn't like it at all. But the most wild, instinctive part of me warned me not to pry.
あれは私の自転車なのよ。二郎さんに選んでもらったからセンスが似てるのは間違いないけれどね。
Sure, we'll go with that.
あ、そうだったんですか。道理で似てると。
私とあなたは今夜出会わなかった。
There was absolutely no murder committed by either of us. Hold on. Is that a white van? Why do I feel like that kind of matches the description of the vehicle from Chapter 1? That tried to run Keichi over. I'm just saying. And now she was talking about something completely different.
何を言ってるんですか？
私とあなたは今夜出会わなかった。
I stayed there, not knowing what to say, and Takano-san repeated her eerie, succinct phrase to me again.
私とあなたは私とあなたは出会わなかった。
Should probably agree to that. Something cold and unpleasant crawled up my spine. I knew, because I'd killed a person with my own hands before. Before, I came to the conclusion that I only had one chance to beat this woman to death to keep her quiet, and I couldn't hesitate, so I could tell that she'd arrived at the very same conclusion. My instincts warned me again. I wish I'd never met this woman. The faint sense, like a rotten smell, drifting from this woman, was no doubt the exact same sense that I was giving off right now. The very peculiar aspiration, the lack of uncertainty at taking a human's life for a purpose, one that only those who have risen above everything had. Actually, maybe I should have called it a nausea. It meant, I didn't know how to explain this very well, but Takano-san was the same as me. In other words, someone who shouldn't have been here. Someone I couldn't have let anybody know was here. Somebody who nobody would have wanted to see. And now that we had, we could calmly pretend, as though we never met. Yes, which meant that, just like I wanted to have nothing else to do with her, she didn't want anything to do with me either. And she, too, wanted to make it so that we never met. Both of us wished for the same thing. Our desires were the same, which meant Takano-san's suggestion was extremely practical, and that I couldn't outright refuse.
それでいいなら、そういうことでもいいです。俺と高野さんは今夜出会わなかった。
そうよね。あなたにとってもその方がいいでしょうから。
Yeah, it would be.
どうしてそう思うんですか？
いちいちうるさいわね。
Yeah, bro, come on, get off it.
それくらい自分で考えられないの、坊や。
She cut me off with the condescending word boy, right in front of my house, in a place most unsuited to killing. And yet, there was a frozen thirst for blood, coming from both of us. I would be killed right here, right now. Yeah, and I should have definitely beaten her as we passed each other. A damp, greasy sweat broke out of my body. That's fine, if you want me. And you can come anytime. When I made up my mind, she shook her hair elegantly and turned on her heel.
よかったわね。私が優しい人で。
What was good? How? Because she was a kind person? Was that it? I didn't get it. Takano-san got into her car. You know, I'm kind of shocked that it's taken him this long to realize this is like a from one murderer to another. We didn't see each other. Cool? Right? Like, he realized it, and then he still wants to play with fate. Like, it seems like he kind of realized, but almost like didn't fully realize. Takano-san got into her car. We didn't exchange any words of parting. I performed a massive feat, the killing of Satoko's uncle, and yet I didn't feel any accomplishment. On the holy night of Oyashiro-sama's curse, on which the taking of another's life was allowed. On the terribly rainy night when the demons wandered, as agents of Oyashiro-sama's will. The demons were never supposed to meet, but suddenly, they did. The demons parted ways triumphantly. There was no reason for them to fight. Both their objectives had already been accomplished. With the rain hitting me like a waterfall, my eyes met with Takano-san's through the car window. The female demon, her mouth twisted into a distorted, fearless smile. It was too late to kill her. Far too late. That first moment, the very first moment we saw each other, had been my best chance. And now that we had parted like this, I was acutely aware of it. I should not have let her live. She beeped her horn quickly, then her car drove away into the deluge. The one woman who knew what really happened tonight disappeared into the dark. As long as she was alive, this night would never really end. Just get into an accident, I thought to myself. In this downpour, slip on some mud or something, and fly face first into a tree, and die. That wasn't a delusion, a wild flight of fantasy. It was an earnest wish. Yes, it was a command. Die. Die. And keep your mouth shut for eternity. Because I have no doubt you're wishing for me to die all the same. My curse upon her faded emptily as Takano-san taillights disappeared into the utter darkness. Her car's lights were completely out of sight now. Even the sound of the engine faded into the sound of the heavy rain and was inaudible now. I, too, turned on my heel. To draw the curtains on this insane night. To open my front door and end it all. I began walking towards the front door. I was covered in mud, and I made a squishing sound with every step I took. Squish. Squish. Don't worry, Keichi Maibara. Squish. Squish. She'll die. Squish. Squish. Her end will be as miserable as she is. I'll throw her into some flames alive and let her dance until she's burned to a crisp. I'll burn her to ashes in the fires of hell itself until she's roasted as much as she deserves.
そう願うぜ。本気でな。
Squish. Huh? Just now, I hadn't taken a step, and yet, a footstep. With that emotion, I turned around. There was a footprint that wasn't my own, and it was obvious someone else was behind me. Somebody else there? I was sick of this. Whoever it was, I was sick of everything tonight. This time, I would kill them. I'd kill them without a second thought. I wouldn't hesitate to turn around and dig another hole. But, fortunately, there was nobody there. I wasn't going to have to kill any more people tonight. This night, I couldn't handle any more of it. Even if I heard an extra footstep each time I stopped, I put it down to me just being tired. Yeah, dude, no. No. You're fried, brother. You are cooked. Somebody that isn't just Takano, somebody else knows. I mean, it could also just be the same paranoia that he felt, I guess, in Chapter 1, but I don't know. I can't help but feel like somebody watched that exchange. Alright, well, first of all, let's just start with the tips. Fire from Hell.
はい、もしもし。救急ですか？消
消防です。
火事ですか？事故ですか？落ち着いて話してください。
多分火事だと思います。こちらは中部高速の柿内サービスエリアなんですけどね。裏の山からなんだかすっごい火と煙が上がってるのが見えるんですよ。あんなところ誰も立ち入らないからなんで火がついてるのかよくわかんないですけど、とにかく連絡した方がいいと思って。山火事にならないとも限らないし。
わかりました。すぐに現場を確認しますので、そちら様のお名前とすぐに連絡のつく電話番号、それから火災現場の詳細な場所をお願いします。
消防司令部より通達。G ブロック西側山斜面にて不審火の通報あり。街道から離れていることからカップルの焚き火か不法投棄のゴミに放火したかの可能性があります。現場は深い森林地帯。周辺に民家はないが延焼の可能性あり。直ちに現場を確認されたし。
消防署ですか。こちらは G ブロック第3消防分隊です。
I feel like someone's getting burned.
通報の現場にさっき到着。ドラム缶が一つ山中に放棄され、火は鎮火しつつあり、延焼の可能性はなし。で、ドラム缶の中に多分人じゃないかと思うんです。人らしきものが灯油か何かで焼かれたという感じで。
Shocker.
警察の人にも連絡した方がいいんじゃないかと思いまして。間違いねえよ。これ人だよ。
Well, okay, so that's familiar. That resembles Takano's death. I guess if for Keiichi's sake, maybe with some luck, that is Takano. Let's see who the victim of the 5th year is. I mean, I'm guessing Tomitake, but we'll see.
今年のたたりってことっすかね。
そういうことになるんですかね。毎年いろんな殺し方を見せてくれますが、今年は特に際立っていますね。
自分で自分の喉をかき破るなんて普通じゃないっす。
Dude, is Tomitake just not allowed to live?
あとは鑑識のじい様に任せましょう。 きっと何かの怪しげな薬物を検出してくれるに違いありません。
I guess in theory it could be someone else, but if the method of death matches for the third time, I'd have to guess it's the same person for the third time.
お疲れ様です。お疲れ様です。あ、大石さん、小宮山さんたちが到着しました。大石さん、お疲れ様です。今年は一等来てるのが出たらしいじゃないですか。
裏を書かれました。私はてっきり今夜知るのは北条哲平だとばかり思ってたんですがね。
Well...
仏は何者です？
富武二郎。年に何回かひなみ沢に来てる趣味の写真家さんです。
Unfortunately, that's the least shocking thing ever.
ノーマークだったな。
どうなんでしょうね。北条宅にずっと張り付いてたのがバレて、ターゲットを変更したとか。
かな。恨めったな。
We'll see. One of my worries is that they had like the Hojo's line tapped or something.
で、北条哲平の方は何も問題なし。
ねえ、夕方頃に娘が祭りに出かけて、その少し後にバイクで出かけまして、先に娘が帰ってきて、あれ？まだ帰ってないかな？どっかで飲んだくれてるのかな？
大石さんいらっしゃいますか？高杉課長からです。1号車の無線にお願いします。
Oh, did they find it? I think they found it. At the very least, they know, right, that something's up. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think Keichi was just going to get away with this, but it seems pretty obvious that that brother is cooked. Okay, so I guess let's talk about this chapter. To be honest, in a way, this chapter is really simple to talk about because the entire chapter was one event, right? It was just a very, very, very momentous event, right? Keiichi killed Teppei, right? It wasn't pretty. It didn't quite go to plan. But most of the plan worked, right? Worked well enough that he killed him, right? And I mean, I guess for Keiichi, that's a dub, right? He got him. But there are too many holes. He's gonna get caught. Like, there's literally no way. In fact, he'll probably be the very first one questioned about this, you know? That rain is really loud and annoying. Hold on. This is a little less annoying. He lured Teppei out like he had planned with the phone call. Unfortunately, if the line is tapped, he really is cooked because he basically gave his real name. What was it, like Maibashi, he said? Way too close, right? When you look at the persons of interest and see Maibara, right, as one of the people really close to Satoko, yeah, okay. GG. GG. So, yeah, I mean, like, I think he's gonna get caught, but he did kill. He did get the kill, and I mean, like, I don't really know what else to say. He's clearly, like, he's off his rocker. I mean, to murder someone like that in cold blood, you kind of have to be, right, most of the time, right? You have to be driven to the brink, right? And he was driven to the brink. By, these last few episodes, I mean, he just couldn't handle that, right? Which, valid, I guess, right? But it's still a murder, right? But he kind of fumbled a few times. First of all, he did not dig that body very deep. A very deep hole, that is, right? That might come back to bite him, right? Also, I mean, just running into Takano, right, in general. In a way, I almost don't think it'll be that bad, right? But, I can't help but think about, they're both going to try and kill each other, right, at some point, right? Like, they both are aware what the other did, right, realistically. And if Keiichi thinks about it, he's going to know exactly who killed Tomatake. And I'm sure once the news that Teppei has gone missing goes out, Takano's going to know exactly who killed Teppei, right? They kind of had that silent agreement. We never saw each other tonight. how long is that going to stay, right? Will they be able to maintain that, or will they feel the need to kill for the other silence? They both seem like... Takano seemed like she'd be pretty ready to kill. Keichi seems very convinced that he needs to kill her. And so I would kind of expect that to happen. So that was really a kind of unfortunate set of circumstances for him, but it could have been worse, I will be honest. I think he has a higher chance of getting away with it because of that mutual silence with Takano than he does, like, convincing somebody else that he wasn't up to anything suspicious, right? Takano just knows and right now doesn't care, right? Whereas, you know, say he ran into, like, I don't know, just a random villager, or God forbid, one of his friends, right? They would have saw right through him, right? Like, no chance. Frankly, I think his friends are still probably going to see right through him. I don't think Keiichi's going to be able to act normal after this. He's kind of gotten a taste for murder, right? And he's like, oh, I'm good at this, right? Not great. On top of that, though, we have these two tips, and I think they're interesting, right? Because here's the thing, right now, we'll see, but this practically looks like the exact same killings as the prior year. Not years, excuse me, the prior chapters, right? Takano, burned in an oil drum, and Tomitake, found on that street corner, right? And here's the thing, Tomitake was 100%, pretty much 100% killed by Takano. Can you apply that to the other routes? I think yes, I think you can. I think it's very likely, right? And I'm just saying, that's something I've been saying for a while, that I think the killer is probably the one who gets demoned away, right? And so, if that is correct, right, if I'm not making faulty assumptions here, and maybe that's not Takano, who knows, right? But I'm kind of thinking the oil drum was a failed demoning away, right? First of all, is one thing. Like, I think that in chapter 2 and 3, that's just been trying to demon them away and failing. But I think it's very likely Takano killed Tomitake and then gets killed herself, right? And like I said, that would be really convenient for Keiichi. But the problem also lies in the fact that the police clearly realize something is up with Teppei and that he's not home. And that he left on his motorcycle, right? And they thought he was going to be the one who was killed, right? And then that police car comes in, right? And is like, hey, we're calling the other squad, right? Like, we found, like, presumably they found something, right? They didn't say it that explicitly, I don't think, right? I think they just said, like, they were calling. Yeah, just a call, in a car. And so, I think there's a very real chance they already found Teppei. And again, I think Keiichi's like the prime suspect. I don't think he'd be able to get through police questioning, like, effectively. So, I guess we'll see what happens to him. So this episode was wild, right? I mean, this whole episode was basically Keiichi formulating his plan to kill Teppei, and then executing that plan, right? He's freed in his objective of saving Satoko, at least, but now the aftermath, and I don't think this is going to go like he wants it to, but that's what the coming episodes will tell us, and I'm really excited to keep playing this game. I mean, this was a dramatic chapter. We're in chapter 10. I can't imagine there's too much longer within this chapter as a whole, right? And so I'm really excited to see how this ends up going. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention, actually, was the fact that, like, if these are the same killings, by the way, if this is Takano and Tomitake again, and Teppei died in this route, I think it really confirms that this isn't just rogue actors, right? This is, like, premeditated, probably by a group, right? Because if it was rogue actors, I think they would have kept it as Keiichi was the only one. But then again, how do you explain last year? I don't know. Maybe I probably shouldn't reach too hard on that right now. Probably think about it overnight. maybe come up with something. Think about what this might mean for who is behind the serial killings right now. So it was a quick little tangent, but I'm still wrapping up this episode. I'm really excited for the next episode. I can't imagine it'll be too much longer. Presumably, this episode will come out 3 days after the last one on May 30th. To be honest, I don't know how many days May has. So I don't know if that means we're working with like June 2nd or June 3rd here. I literally don't have a clue. So it'll presumably be out on one of those 2 days. Yeah, that's all I've got for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a crazy episode. I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, that'll be all for me now, though. I'm looking forward to the next episode, and I hope to see you guys there. Peace.